President is busy coming in, the deputy president motorcade is coming in there. We will see as soon as within an hour or so.
Yeah. All right, so as you mentioned, Manalisi, those visuals that you were seeing are of the president making his way here. And Colonel, I'll bring you into this. I mean, obviously, this is a moment now. He's left his residence and he's making his way here.
Yeah, correct. The president he will be making his way to the parliament.
Okay, so we should obviously keep an eye on that, and we will. We've got our cameras following that motorcade, and as soon as they make their arrival there, we'll be sure to capture that moment for you live. You know, it's quite interesting to see a lot of the parliamentarians decide they don't want to do this red carpet. They're going to go straight in and take a seat. I mean, I can see a lot of photographs and pictures being posted on social media that we're not necessarily capturing here, but inside, Tito Mboweni sitting there, our finance minister. People asking, I wonder if he's brought a tin of lucky fish along. I don't think so, though.
And maybe not, but even some of the VIPs, you've spoken earlier about the speaker, former speaker, Max Sisulu and Frederick Junala. I was talking to one of the staff of Parliament. I understand that they are at the holding room, the VIP holding room, not far from the office of the speaker. And you know that the presidents, former President Thabo Mbeki and FW de Klerk and Kgalema Motlanthe also anticipated here. Obviously, President Zuma was supporting his son in court today.
In fact, let me talk to you now before we go to former President Jacob Zuma's non-attendance. There, as you mentioned, former President Kgalema Motlanthe making his way out of the car and onto the red carpet. So these are our VVIP guests coming through, and they're going to be in that holding room as you suggested. So it's great to see our former President Kgalema Motlanthe here and being very involved. He's exceptionally involved in the running of everything. I mean, we saw him talking to youth recently and talking to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. His wife, of course, Gugu Mchali as well, with him and accompanying him. So it's like I was mentioning. I mean, to see the caliber of Kgalema Motlanthe back with a big vocal voice towards issues is a very promising thing.
No, absolutely, and he has become a voice of reason. You know, if you look even within the ANC processes themselves, you know that he is leading this committee which is probing whether some members of the party did take part in the formation of some opposition parties, especially the ATM. Kgalema Motlanthe is a very credible and leader within the ANC, a very trusted veteran, and he is coming out expressing himself on issues affecting the youth, on issues, socio-economic issues generally, is a very, very, very important thing for the ANC, especially for this new dawn which the president is so strenuously trying to push, and the unity within the party. People like Kgalema Motlanthe, and to a large extent President Thabo Mbeki, would be very, very vital in that process.
I know, and I mean, let's again talk to another big responsibility that has fallen onto the shoulders of the former President Kgalema Motlanthe. He's also going to be heading up that probe into SG Ace Magashule and the formation of all these other parties. I mean, this is a big responsibility as well. So let's talk over that while we get more visuals of our former president walking into the National Assembly.
Absolutely, there he comes. I mean, if you put on President Kgalema Motlanthe and Frederick Junala in a commission like that, there is no way that anybody can come around and say this is factions. You know, I mean, these are, as I just said, that are very, very credible leaders, I mean, of the movement, who's got nothing, you know, vested in interest vested in the running of the party, because they are retired, they've paid their dues, they have run their race, I mean, with flying colors. So they are the most credible leaders that can be given such kind of responsibilities, you know, as to probing, especially such matters that can be very divisive within the ANC.
Yeah, I mean, the parties that they talk towards, that's something of the ATM, which we saw arriving a little bit earlier, so we'll wait on that one. I want to, before we move, and obviously we'll see many more of the arrivals coming, In fact, I can see a car pulling up right now, so I'm not going to get into too much conversations because we're going to see who's going to step onto the red carpet, and that's why sitting here is a great seat for us to be able to show you everybody that is arriving. And at this point, I would like to welcome also our SABC2 viewers. What a pleasure to have you with us. In around about 50 minutes from now, we should be getting our State of the Nation address from our President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will be delivering his third SONA, but this, of course, will be his first State of the Nation address of the 6th Parliament on this evening at 7 o'clock. So there's Judge Mogoeng making his way out, and that's always a wonderful face to see entering onto the red carpet. I mean, Manalisi, you see the likes of a Judge Mogoeng, and yeah, I mean, what do you think?
Absolutely. We must remember that this sitting is the only sitting that combined all the three spheres of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So Judge Mogoeng and other members of the judiciary, I'm sure you are going to see other judges and the judges of the appeal court and the judges of the High Court. Probably Judge Lope is going to be here from the Cape High Court, but also the executive led by President Cyril Ramaphosa, and with that symbolic, gesture of also inviting his former or his predecessors, President F.W. de Klerk, Mbeki, and Kgalema Motlanthe. This sitting combine all those houses of parliament. That's why even the security tells you that the people who are in town are not just ordinary people. So Chief Justice Mogoeng obviously will be one of those most important guests invited here today.
Most definitely, our Chief Justice there. He's been in the office since September 2011, in fact. So he's got credentials that certainly earn him that title of the Honourable Chief Justice Mogoeng, and it's great to see him arriving as one of the VIP guests that is making their way into the National Assembly. Let's just watch him as the special moment unfolds in front of us. All right, he's made his way into the National Assembly, and it looks like he's accompanied there by his wife as well, Mapefo Mogoeng. So also wonderful to see their spouses by their sides as well. So I know that the gun salute is ready, and we're going to try and get that visual for you ahead of it, very much so ahead of its time. It's not going to be happening right now, but that's a shot of the cannons, and I can see already the Colonel getting a bit of a twinkle in his eye as soon as he saw that coming onto the screen as well. So, I mean, Colonel, talk to us about this.
Leanne, those are will be forming part of the national salute. Obviously, as I said earlier on, the National Ceremonial Guard with the salute flight and as well as the guns. They will all be giving the national salute to the Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah. Talk to us about the tradition behind this 21-gun salute. I mean, it's the firing of a cannon that came from the 14th century, and yet it's still something that we do today. Why is it so significant?
Well, the firing of those guns, or the 21-gun salute, traditionally it has been always and still is today in many countries as a symbol of salute to the head of state, and in our case the Commander-in-Chief. So you would know that the President is not only having one head, he, as the head of government, as the head of state, and also as the Commander-in-Chief of the armed forces, that those guns, the National Ceremonial Guard, as well as the salute flight, all of them, then they will form part of the national salute
All right.
to the president.
All right. Manalisi, let's talk over these visuals. More people arriving, going in, taking their seats. All of the party leaders?
In fact, I wanted to make a brief comment about, again, going back to Chief Justice Mukwege. You see our viewers sitting at home on a television, they might not know where he's sitting. From where he sits, just opposite the Speaker of Parliament and the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, he's got a full view of all the benches, and I'm always of a view that his presence there, brings some certain respectability in the House, especially when the House starts to degenerate, especially during the times of President Zuma. From where the Chief Justice is sitting and the view that he will get from the cameras and from all members of Parliament, he's sort of looking at them like directly, has an eye contact with all of them, and his position in terms of having a decorum in the House, and the fact that people can disagree, agree to disagree, but in a manner that is respectable. So it is important to mention that when he's here, unlike President Mbeki and others who will be staying on top of the gallery there, you'll just see the cameras, but all opposition benches underneath them cannot see them. They can't have an eye-to-eye contact with them, except in the television speakers within the National Assembly. So
Indeed.
Chief Justice Mukwege, sometimes I always find him, even if he says nothing, just sitting there and just looking at them, that in a way it's as if he say, you behave.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping a good eye on them. Well, we heard the Navy and the band there playing for us, Tumamina, and they've played that song about 3 times this evening. So, through the afternoon, and as the sun sets, and we get some wonderful sounds from the band, and we'll continue to listen to them and also see some of the arrivals. Some of our former presidents are expected here. We've seen former President Kgalema Motlanthe arriving, and I'm sure we'll also see the arrival of former President Thabo Mbeki, who has confirmed that he will be here, as well as not former President F.W. de Klerk. I remember this morning I was told that he unfortunately is unable to be here. He did say that he's not coming. However, it's that we know that former President Jacob Zuma is not coming. Let's talk to the significance of this, because he was missing from the inauguration. He's now missing from the State of the Nation address. Manalisi?
To be honest with you, Leon, we can't take away the tension within the ANC with regard to either the presence or absence of President Zuma from this House. I mean, the issues that President Cyril Ramaphosa will touch on is issues of corruption. Stating from the so-called 9 years of the increase of these corrupt activities within the government, and who was there during that time? It was President Jacob Zuma. So I think at personal level, I don't think he will be comfortable sitting there hearing the president outlining all these corrupt activities and how they are going to deal with it. So I think really he needs a cool-off period, really maybe just listen to this thing from his couch at home. So I wouldn't take out these, the ANC battles from the fact that he always has a reason why he's not here.
Yeah.
It's unlike the former president. We know that President Mbeki used to come and attend these things. After he was recalled, he didn't attend, I think, for 2 consecutive State of the Nation. He started, I think, on the 3rd one. You'd, in that sense, to say that maybe, he just decided that he needed to be here right after he has been recalled. But we'll see. Time will tell. We'll see if President Zuma will continue with his absence in the next State of the Nation address.
Manalisi, thanks very much. Manalisi, of course, our parliamentary reporter, always here witnessing what happens within parliamentary precincts, spending his days here. Let's leave you with some more sounds from the Navy. We'll then take you back to Johannesburg and continue this live coverage of the State of the Nation address, which would be taking place in around about 40 minutes from now by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Stay tuned.
And what you're seeing there, live visuals from the parliamentary precinct in Cape Town ahead of the State of the Nation Address 2019, the second one this year. And of course, we'll give you more of that rolling coverage just right after this break.
Every year, more and more people all around the country are saving money on their car insurance. Let's meet some of them.
Well, I'm doing my articles in chartered accountancy, so
Wow.
I have financial knowledge. What she said just made sense, so
Yeah.
we switched and saved.
How much did you end up saving?
Almost 450 rand.
You guys have children yet?
No, but the mother-in-law is pushing very hard.
If you can convince your mom-in-law to switch and save, that'll get you 1,000 rand off of your next monthly premium. With the money she saves, it's a win-win situation.
Mother Frida, if you want babies, you must switch and save.
Yo! If you think it's a hassle getting a quote, put us to the test. Call or SMS now for a quick quote and make 2019 your time to save. SMS SAVE to 34473.
It was a simple telephone call, informed him of the basics. I had an accident. With most insurance, once you've had an accident, they increase your premium. And then when he told me this is what the premium would be, are you sure? Did you hear that I had an accident?
How much did you end up saving?
Half of my previous premium, almost 500 rand. Start your year off on the right foot. Queen, go, no.
If you've been with the same insurer for years and haven't recently put Outsurance to the test, call or SMS now and make 2019 your time to save. SMS SAVE to 34473. So this lady from Outsurance calls.
Yes, friendly, vibrant, energetic. And she made that sale within 3 seconds. No, 3 sentences.
3 seconds is even better than 3 cents.
She was good. Ended up saving almost 300 rand per month.
How would you summarize your overall experience with Outsurance? 3 words.
Fresh, vibrant, and lekker. Kinaki.
They've all saved. Why shouldn't you? SMS SAVE to 34473 and make 2019 your time to save. Tell me how you feel about being in one of these Outsurance ads that you've seen on TV.
It's exciting. The husband is a bit jealous.
When you did make that call, what was the experience like?
They listened to you and they helped you save.
How much did you end up saving?
Almost 500 rand a month. With the savings, we can do more things as a family. Switch and save.
Yes! When?
Now.
Right now?
Yes.
Tell them.
It's your time, it's your time, it's your time, it's your time.
If it's been years since you shopped around for a better car insurance premium, SMS SAVE to 34473 and see what you can save. How did your path with Outsurance cross?
And I saw this advert about this guy, Chacha. So Mr. Chacha got me thinking, if I do switch and save, I won't just do the Chacha, I'll be doing the Tango.
And the difference that you're now saving?
It's just over 900 rand.
In 3 words, summarize your experience.
Smart, professional, and they save me money.
You know that last one was like 4 words.
I know, but that's how good they are.
Just think what you could do with the money you save. SMS SAVE to 34473. 2019, it's your time to save.
So what happened is I made the phone call and I asked Olisa to just call me back. He explained everything to me, a meaningful conversation.
How much did you actually end up saving?
Almost 750 rand. That's how I switched and saved. But I'm glad our paths crossed.
We could make an Outsurance connection here. Have you and Kolisa gone out on a date or something?
No, it was just insurance.
Oh, is it your time?
Yeah, it's my time.
If you're curious to see if you really are getting the lowest possible car insurance premium, SMS SAVE to 34473 and make 2019 your time to save.
Made a call, so what did I have to lose, right? I had the nicest conversation with Naz. He ended up saving me over 1,000 rand.
What?
Yeah.
How long were you then with your previous insurer?
Around 2009.
Nearly a decade.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money there that you could have saved, right?
almost.
Let's focus on the future. If you were to give somebody advice about starting off the new year,
Make 2019 yours. Have a 2019 year.
are you just accepting annual increases without looking around to see if you could be paying less? SMS SAVE to 34473 and make 2019 your time to save. Tell me about how you heard about Outsurance the first time.
I was contacted by a very, very friendly consultant. Gave me the amounts, honestly didn't believe it.
Why didn't you believe
it? It was too good to be true.
Now you're making me curious. What was the amount?
1,305 Rand difference. I was like, what? No ways. I screamed on the phone. Other guys sitting around me like, what's wrong with this guy?
Can we just have a moment of silence? Just...
Thank you, Outsurance.
Real clients, real savings. Don't overpay for car insurance. Put Outsurance to the test today. If you don't do it, you may regret it. So do it now. SMS SAVE to 34473 and make 2019 your time to save.
Hello, I'm Nana, and I want to tell you a bit about Economics Unbound. It is a live studio current affairs program that brings an understanding of the economy, how it operates, and how it is managed. The show seeks to include ordinary South Africans in purposeful and well-informed discussions about the economy.
For you to be in business, you need to work with other businesses,
while providing them with enough information to make better economic and financial decisions.
Bringing informal sectors into a formal economy and making it more inclusive.
Any business opportunity that is below 1 million must be given to township entrepreneurship.
Through this program, audiences can look forward to 30 minutes of deep and tough questioning on the issues of the week.
To whom does women's unpaid work go?
We're explorers. We always have been. Endlessly curious. Always looking for answers. For new frontiers. For new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job. It's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
We stay on the visuals, they're busy shooting.
We drove around this.
In my time, I've truly seen it all firsthand. Angizwanga, ngizibonele ngalawam amehlo. Going through my photographs and reflecting on my memory box really brings back many life experiences that are bittersweet and humbling. In this, my homeland, I've entertained tourists and offshore traders. I've evolved from dealing with the battering system to trading foreign exchange. I've traveled to the ends of the world and tasted a diversity of culinary palates. To outsiders, I have lived alongside wild animals, tamed some, and collected livestock as wealth. So my memory box is overflowing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bragging, but in fact, I'm breaking and hurting deep down inside of this heart of mine.
100 hours sharp. The State of the Nation address divided into three main parts. So the first is the most important, the public participation role in the ceremony, when the Civil Guard of Honor welcomes the President and his guests as they walk along the red carpet, some of which you've seen. This is then followed by a state ceremonial, which includes a 21-gun salute and the South African Air Force fly past, and finally the official address by the President. We'll be speaking in just a moment to Senior Research Fellow Trade Collective Lebohang Peku to find out more. But just looking, as you see, looking at those visuals coming through, Mildred Oliphant, one of the ministers, as she makes her way down that red carpet on the parliamentary precinct. The Limpopo Premier, Stan Mathabata, also walking down that red carpet, and we would like to extend a warm welcome now to our SABC 2 viewers as we take a look at those visuals at the parliamentary precinct, expected to speak any moment, President Cyril Ramaphosa, in 30 minutes. But let's take a look at what is expected. Senior Research Fellow at Trade Collective, Ms. Lebohang Peku, joins us now on Skype for more. A very good evening to you, Ms. Peku, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's start with your top three expectations of the address. What are they?
I'm sure that the president is going to want to take us into his confidence and address the economic downturn, particularly the truncated GDP figures that we received just a few days ago or a couple of weeks ago. And I think given that one of his key voting call cards was basically that he wants to get this country working again and that we're open for business. The second part will probably say something around land restitution, the land commission and so forth. Land over the last couple of years has become a four-letter word, sometimes in good ways and sometimes in bad ways. And I'm sure he'll want to take control of that discourse and try to situate himself and the next 12 months within that as a policy priority that is orderly and that also is economically viable. The third part would probably to say something around youth, because he seems to have spent quite a bit of time explicitly courting young people and spending time with them. There's the youth employment, youth employment strategy that's been put into place, yes, and I think he needs to give us a bit of feedback as to the efficiency of that and so forth. So I think those would probably be some of the three key touching points. And I think to sneak in a fourth one, something around state-owned enterprises.
And we'll talk about the management of state-owned enterprises and their contribution to the economy in just a moment. But in terms of the economic conditions, some are saying we're just a tiptoe away from a recession. What's your point of view of that?
I'm not sure whether we have ever left the recession. So about a year or two ago, I said that the 2 or 3 quarters of downturn of non-growth illustrated that we were already in a recession, and this was borne out a few months later when it was said that we're in a technical recession.
Okay, so just in terms of what is pivotal at the moment for him to address? The jobs market, obviously one of the biggest. Stats SA reporting that has decreased significantly over the first quarter of 2019. What kind of stimulus can be explored?
Well, there's such a big disconnect between what the skills that we have at our disposal and the kind of aspirational economy that we want to be. We're very much focused on this fourth industrial revolution, science, technology, and yet we don't seem to have created the sort of skills base that's necessary to really back that up. So I think that is really an absolute urgent imperative to address that. We need to get the TVET colleges, the training and vocational and educational facilities working properly and offering different entry points into the marketplace. And that doesn't need to take years and years. That could be as soon as a few months away if really there's a real commitment to put into place a curriculum. We already know the kind of skills shares that are the scarce skills that are needed in the economy. We also know the sorts of areas where our economy has been underutilized. For example, the chemical industry, agriculture, agribusiness. We also know that the automotive sector is also needing a lot of attention, and that's been always on the priority list. as the kind of economy that we want to build. We have IPAP, the Industrial Policy Framework. So these are not new things. It would be very useful, I think, for the president and his advisors to draw these streams together.
When you mentioned reskilling earlier on, it's been said that the target just in terms of this administration is around 3.5 million people. That clearly is a drop in the ocean. You're speaking about industrialization earlier on. People have raised a question about whether or not it's not time to re-look at the informal trade or in the formal sector. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, thanks for raising that, because earlier on, I was in another discussion talking about that. We not only need to look at the state of unemployment, but we also need to redefine what employment actually is. South Africa is in common with many other African countries in relation to the kind of economies that we have, and these are not labor absorbent economies. Very few of us actually have a 9-to-5 jobs and are classically employed. We probably need to think about redefining what employment means, because there's economic exercises taking place all the time. There's what I call the traffic light hustle, where people are selling oranges, tomatoes, cell phone chargers, all sorts of things. So there are people who are clearly, there's a whole cohort of people in this country who are making an honest and resourceful living and who probably need a bit more state support. But of course, that is not counted as formal employment, even though I would call it the parallel economy, because it actually is where perhaps 40-50% of our economy actually takes place, bearing in mind as well that many people in the 9-to-5 economy also have that participate in that parallel economy.
So there's been a conversation saying, as you're also saying, that there needs to be a broader strategy. From where you're sitting, where are we lacking in terms of harnessing all of those people who are seeking jobs and the informal sector, and how it can help reduce poverty?
Yeah, so we have, unlike a lot of other African countries, we already have finance development and small enterprise development mechanisms in place. They need to come to the party, and they need to ensure that the red tape of securing loans and securing business facilitation skills and entrepreneurial support is reduced considerably. I mean, you have your larger scale, your IDCs, you have your NEFs, you have your CEDAs, you have your National Youth Development Agency. So it's not a lack of support, but I think that there's certainly a lack of implementation. And there's a big gap between sort of grassroots entrepreneurship and people in townships and rural areas and their access to these facilities. So those institutions need to really do a lot more outreach work and to make themselves much more accessible. They are also these township economies and these township hubs that are becoming a huge thing. And cities like Soweto have actually illustrated this. What they are not is they're not particularly always well organized and coherently organized around sector, but they are a fantastic model of doing township economies of scale, which are closer to people.
Ms. Pheko, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for speaking to us, political analyst Mr. Lebohang Pheko, who is also a political economist. And as you can see, the judge presidents of the various courts walking into the chamber to the National Assembly. Let's take you back to Cape Town. Leanne? Walking into the chamber to the National Assembly.
Very much.
Let's take you back to Cape Town.
Tapiso, thanks very much, and welcome back to our live coverage from Cape Town at Parliament, where we're watching all of this that you're seeing on your screen taking place live. As you heard Tapiso saying that the judiciary have just walked in, and prior to that we actually saw all the provincial premiers walking in. I'm sure you noticed that on your screen as well, from all of the respective provinces, from the Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, you name it, they all came through. And then of course the Speaker of all the respective provinces as well. So within a couple of minutes time, a lot is going to be happening. We should be seeing the arrival of the Deputy President of South Africa, David Mabuza. He should be coming through shortly. In fact, we saw just a bit earlier here on our live broadcast, we saw the former presidents, Kgalema Motlanthe, arriving, but then also we've subsequently seen former President Thabo Mbeki also coming through and taking his seat there up on the top, getting a nice aerial view Our Chief Justice is watching on as all of these proceedings start taking place now and taking shape. So we should start seeing, as I mentioned, our Deputy President arrive any minute now. The Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly also should be coming through, accompanying the President and Deputy President. That's Letshisa Tsunoli, as well as the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Miss Sylvia Lucas. Well, the EFF making their way in and taking their seats, and also getting ready for the President to come through. So in about 20 minutes from now, our President Cyril Ramaphosa delivering the State of the Nation address. With me in studio, I've got Mzwayi Mbeche, who of course is our presidential correspondent, following the President around, reporting on all stories that pertain to the President. This is a big moment for our President, because although this is his third State of the Nation address, this is now the time for him to set the tone. This is his moment to shine. Previously, he was taking over from former President Jacob Zuma, but now he's been elected, he's in, he is president, now he's the one with all the cards.
Well, he now, Leanne, has the full mandate of his own. Remember, in terms of our constitution, he was finishing the mandate of the then President Jacob Zuma. So he is now starting, he is crafting his own vision, everything that he wants to see achieved. He has the mandate. I mean, the 8th of May basically gave him that mandate. And of course, the challenges he already knows about. I think he's lucky that he got to taste power a year before he got given the mandate. So he already knows the challenges. And of course, the issue around the economy and job creation, very top of his mind.
Well, it certainly is, and I mean that's I think what everybody will be tuning in to hear about. As much as there are many issues with regards to state-owned entities, there's issues regarding a lot of things, but I think it's the economy that people want to hear what the plan is, what is going to happen from tomorrow, because people don't want to hear about the future and what we're thinking of and what we're meeting about. We want to know what tomorrow holds for us.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the issue of the SOEs. We've had a chief executive officer at ESCOM resign, at SAA resign. The SABC is struggling. So these are very important institutions. So what he says about those will be very crucial, because we can't afford to say we want to grow the economy, yet we are not sure whether we have enough supply of power. We can't say we want to attract the world, yet we can't assure anybody about our SAA, our national carrier. And of course, things like our public broadcaster are very crucial. So we expect that he probably will have to at least tell us what exactly he's going to do about certain things that are very critical in the growth of the economy. I mean, he's held the investment summit sometime last year. Well, some people are saying the reason perhaps there's not much change in terms of the economy given those pledges, because some of those were already in the pipeline. So I think South Africans would want really to hear new initiatives, new plans, and concrete action from the President.
Yeah, we heard a lot of promises that were given in the last February SONA, and it's I suppose quite telling to look back and see how much has been achieved since then. And of course, we're keeping a very close eye on the red carpet and the arrival of the President, which should be, Colonel, in around about what time is he expected to be here? At exactly 1:45, is that correct?
The President should be here in the vicinity 1854.
Okay, at about 54, so that's
1854.
Okay, excellent. Colonel is here, keeping time on everything for us and ensuring that we are quite aware of how it's happening. So, let's go back to some of the promises that were made in the State of the Nation. So, what he was saying was he promised this year, this was in 2018, we will be initiating measures to set the country on a new path of growth, employment and transformation. And ever since then, there's been no growth. It's all been very much so down.
Exactly. That's why I was saying some of those initiatives that you saw, they were already in the pipeline. But I can tell you that today is his opportunity to tell us some of those concrete actions and those plans that really he was speaking about. Because if the country continues to do things the same way, we'll continue to see what we are seeing. I mean, just last week, 2 weeks ago, we had a decline in the economy. So if nothing changes, the trajectory will continue. So he has to come up with plans and measures, really, that will turn the situation around. Otherwise, South Africans will continue to feel the pinch.
Yeah, they will, certainly. Now, another promise was that creation of jobs. I mean, that was a very big promise, and they spoke, we're going to embark on a number of measures to address the unemployment, and one of the initiatives will be to convene that job summit. I'm quoting from the SONA over a year ago.
In fact, after the Lekgotla gathering of the ANC-NEC, the ANC, the governing party, boldly told us that in 5 years they would reduce the unemployment from 27% to 14%. So if that is to be realized, those plans will have to be communicated today. What is it that will be done to effect that kind of dramatic or drastic action?
All right, a bit earlier you saw some visuals on your screen of the motorcade, the presidential motorcade, on his way to the parliamentary precinct, and we'll continue to follow that and, of course, cross in and out between those visuals. So we're going to put them up on the screen once again and show you this motorcade. So making his way here into the precinct, and we're looking forward to his arrival and the welcome that he is going to get by everybody that's already convened inside and is seated and waiting and ready. Also, people that are ready and waiting are the Guard of Honor. They marched up that red carpet. They're standing right behind us and waiting in order to salute the president as he stands there on the podium in front of the stairs of the National Assembly. There's also that 21-gun salute that's going to happen, as well as that fly-by, that fly-over by our military and the singing of the national anthem. So if you've just tuned into this broadcast, you've come in at a good time. This is where we are heading into this the highlight right now, so it's going to be a moment. So in fact, this is a good time, and I'll tell you why. The Deputy President of South Africa has just arrived here at the parliamentary precinct. That's Didi Mabuza. So we're going to, in just a couple of minutes' time, be able to witness him walking up that red carpet. In fact, there are those visuals, and that's the Deputy President of South Africa making his way up the red carpet, and of course he is accompanied there with our deputy speakers and speakers as well. So, Ndile, let's talk to our Deputy President. I mean, it was quite a difficult time when the swearing in as an MP came in. He said he wasn't going to. He was going to appear before the Integrity Committee. And then suddenly, the next week, everything turned around. It was fine again. And he, was sworn in. And there he is as Deputy President.
It was quite interesting. I mean, as I was actually watching him, I was thinking that 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we got, in inverted commas, sold a dummy that he could not be president because, I mean, many people just concluded that, oh, he probably was pulling out. But, Leanne, many people have said Deputy President Didi Mabuza is one of the great strategists when it comes to maneuvering the political issues. I mean, when everyone, out of nowhere, he said, you've been fingering me, okay, bring it on. And then they couldn't. I mean, the Integrity Commission basically couldn't produce anything that was substantial. It appeared that they had to rely on newspaper clippings. And then after that, he had to be sworn in again. So, very interesting character indeed.
Yeah, it certainly is, and somebody to watch very, very closely, as we do know that what was he? He's what did they call him? The cat with 9 lives. Yeah, he's the cat with 9 lives. And he certainly is surviving a lot, isn't he?
In fact, he says it himself. I mean, he would say, you know what, the cat is back. So
the cat is back and strutting down into the National Assembly. But there he is, our Deputy President, Didi Mabuza, Sylvia Lucas, walking with him as well, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, and the Deputy Speaker, Letshiso Tsunoli, as well. 10 minutes before the State of the Nation address is going to be delivered as the launch of the 6th parliamentary session resumes here in South Africa, and our President Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be delivering this to a jam-packed National Assembly, lots of invited guests, lots of VIPs, all of the MPs present there, and everybody getting ready for that arrival of our president. You know, this is taking on a bit of a different tone, because usually what happens is there's the singing of the national anthem. The deputy president is usually standing outside as well, Mzwai, outside on the podium. So we can see things have changed a little bit this year.
Remember, they cut a lot of frills. I don't know, maybe that aspect could still happen, because I see there's a tent erected outside there. But they have to cut a lot of frills. That is why they tell us that they saved, I think,
46%. That's what we've been told.
Which is a
normally
lot.
around about it hovers around 3.8 to 4 million for this, but now we're sitting at 2 million, even below the 2 million mark.
Yes. So it does show. In fact, we're even saying the State of the Nation address is quite different.
It has a very different feel.
It appears very subdued. So, and I think it talks to the mood of the country at the moment. Remember, we're not doing well in terms of our economy, and as much as we are excited that there's a new beginning, but the reality is also striking. That the fact of the matter is that we have to pull up our socks. That is why all eyes will really be glued onto the TV screens to really hear our number one citizen. What is it that he will tell us, that he will urge us to go together with him to get this country out of the difficulties it's facing?
Yeah, it is, and it's big keys that we're going to be waiting to hear, and I think honesty is the one thing that people are hoping and expecting, is that we need a very honest, open and transparent State of the Nation address like never before.
Absolutely. I mean, Leanne, if they tell us that they have decided to have, or rather to reduce the unemployment from 27 to 14%, they should be able to be very honest. What is it that they will do that will contribute towards that? Because that is an ambitious target. Of course, it's good. I mean, if it happens, all South Africans will rejoice. But they should be able to take us into confidence. Because once we are able to do that, I mean, South Africans are not stupid, and they know that there are challenges. They just need to know how we are going, where we are going, so who we are going with. So once that is done, really.
Well, these visuals, I think, are absolutely beautiful, magnificent visuals that are coming here from Parliament, as you see the bust of our former President Nelson Mandela and the Guard of Honor standing before him and waiting for the now President, Cyril Ramaphosa. He should be arriving in around about 2 minutes from now. That's according to Colonel Fenny, who's seated with us, who's told us at exactly 1854 that presidential motorcade should be arriving, and then of course all of the formalities will begin once that does happen. One of the last minute additions, something that of course had been taken off of the agenda, was the the praise singer that is going to be there today, and it's going to be great. The Mbongi for SONA. I've just been given his name. His name is actually Bradley van Sitters, and he's part of the Khoi and San Active Awareness Group. So he is somebody that I know people are looking very forward to hearing and doing what he does best, and that's welcoming the President into the National Assembly. But it gives us great pleasure to introduce our President as he walks up that red carpet. Colonel Fenny, talk to us about what's happening now, because this is that moment where the President has arrived.
As I said, that the President will be arriving at 1854. Indeed, he is arriving. There are now those two officers, those are the two full colonels from the South African Army. They are then going to be the two aide-de-camps that will be taking the President to the podium.
So the President will, of course, be accompanied by his spouse, Tsepo Motsepe, and he also will be accompanied by the National Assembly Speaker Thandi Modise and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Amos Masondo, as well as the Secretary of Parliament that will be walking up that red carpet with him.
That's correct.
Once he reaches the top, because I think it's best to get everything here, because once he starts walking in, we certainly want to watch that, no commentary, and we'll just watch that all unfold. So he will then get to the top of the podium outside the National Assembly, and then the national salute will take place.
Correct. Once he reaches the podium, the National Ceremonial Guard Commander, in this case it's Lieutenant Colonel Likinyana, is going to bring them to attention, and they will then salute. Simultaneously, as they will then be saluting the President, then the 21-gun salute will also commence, and with that there will be the salute flight by the South African Air Force, which the Gripen in this particular case will be flown by Major Vundla, who's a call sign Doberman, from 2 Squadron at Air Force Base Makado.
Very quickly, Mzwai, as we've, I suppose, come to the moment where he reaches the red carpet, you know, you follow presidents all over. What would you say a president feels at a moment like this? And especially, I mean, although this is the third State of the Nation address that the president is giving, this is the first of the 6th democratically elected parliament.
I think he feels a very great sense of huge responsibility. I mean, these people hardly sleep because everyone is looking up to them for whatever challenges that is there. I think right now, as much as he realizes that all eyes are on him, and then he is thinking about the aspirations of all those people. So will I be able to live up to their expectations? So will I be able to fulfill those promises? I mean, he will give you that smile, but he knows that the sense of responsibility is huge, and he dare not disappoint.
Well, let's let the visuals speak for themselves, as one can only imagine what our president is feeling at this point in time. But he steps onto that podium, and this is where the national anthem will begin.
Sida, Danete, Horekare Here, Abotse, Kataire Una, in Sida Sorode, Kaiba Asiba, Sakonsi, Karasi, Wasibakwa, Abotse Kaire, Danete de Mini, in Sida Sorode, Kaiba Asiba, Sakonsi, Karati, Wasibakwa, Wakarati, Taragangati, Nete di South Karuma. Oh, Nesine, where's Na, where Dare, Utse, Waida, how was it a Kumisa? Utse, Waida, how was it a Kumisa? Utse, Sida Quasa Clay, Elo, Tire Sida Casa, Sida Nausa Kati Clay, Tire Sida Dikusa, Kaiko Kopa, Sida Clay, Kaiko Kopa, Sida Clay, Ida Kom Komiao, Kaire, Sida Itse. Zukwatse, abose sida di ngaun itse, sida itse, nganaba kuire, in huna uire, ida sida klati uire, keisere kiko tabo, kasi kasha, ida harona amre, sas kom khava sida zo, abose sida di ngaun itse, zukwatse, ida sida ganganti, watsire, sas kia sida elo, sida kutse, zukwatse, kurukawa. Kurukawa! Kori! Ora! Atamato! Kurukawa! Ora! Ori! Kokosawa! Namawa! Concept! Concept! Keigangans! 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 Waida! Kauba! Sida Kumisa! Ute! Waida! Kauba! Sida Kumisa! Conquest! Conquest! Conquest!
Thank you very much.
Ayesa! Ayesa! Gangan!
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable members, there will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. You may take your seats. Thank you, members. Honorable members, the President has called for this joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces in terms of Section 84(2)(d) of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, read with Joint Rule 7(1)(a), in order to deliver his State of the Nation address to Parliament. I will now call on the President to address the joint sitting. Mr. President.
Thank you.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Thandi Modise, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Amos Masondo, Deputy President David Mabuza, Chief Justice Mogoeng, and esteemed members of the judiciary, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, former President Thabo Mbeki, former Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Frini Jinwala, former Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Max Sisulu, former Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Balega Mbete, President of the Pan-African Parliament, Mr. Roger Deng, veterans of the struggle for liberation, Dr. Dennis Goldberg, Dr. Andrew Mlangeni, Advocate Priscilla Jana, Ms. Joyce Dipale, Ms. Lillian Kiachile, Ms. Smali Makungo, ministers and deputy ministers, premiers and speakers of provincial legislatures, chairperson of SALGA and the executive mayors who are with us tonight, Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Mr. Lesija Kganyago, heads of Chapter 9 institutions, leaders of faith-based formations, leaders of academic and research institutions, members of the diplomatic corps, invited guests, honorable members of the National Assembly and honorable members of the National Council of Provinces and fellow South Africans. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to address you all who are here in the nation. We gather at the start of the 6th Democratic Parliament, exactly 106 years to the day after the Natives Land Act, one of the most devastating acts of dispossession that brought about a lot of pain and indeed humiliation to millions of South Africa, came into force on this very day, 106 years ago. We recall the words of Sol Plaatje on that tragic day when he said, awakening on Friday morning, June 20th, 1913, the South African native found himself not actually a slave, but a pariah in the land of his birth, close quotes. Our people suffered gravely and endured untold hardships as a result of the implementation of the Native Land Act. The effect of that law, which was implemented today, 106 years ago, are still present with us today. More than a century after that grave injustice, we are called upon as a nation to forge a South Africa where no person will be a slave or a pariah, only free and equal and respected. We gather here at an extremely difficult and challenging time in the life of our young democracy. Yet we are also at a moment in our history, a moment that holds great hope and promise. In 25 years of democracy, we have made remarkable progress in building a new nation in which all South Africans have equal rights and broadening opportunities. Over 25 years, we have done much to meet our people's basic needs, to reduce poverty, and to transform a devastated economy that was built to serve the interests of only a few South Africans. Working together, we have laid a firm foundation on which we can build a country in which all may have peace, comfort, and contentment. Yet, we also meet at a time when our country is confronted by enormous and severe challenges. Our economy is not growing at the level that we want it to grow. In fact, in the last quarter, we had negative growth. Not enough jobs are being created in our country. This is the concern that rises above all others. It affects everyone. It affects every household. It affects you, the young man who lives in Mzimhlope in Soweto, out of school for 5 years now and still not employed. It impacts on the single mother from Delft here in the Western Cape, whose grant supports not just herself, but her grandchildren as well. It also hurts the worker in Nelson Mandela Bay, who, despite earning a salary, is struggling to make ends meet. It is hard for a young student from Salt Lake University in the Northern Cape who must rely on a thin stipend from his parents to feed himself. The lived reality of our people is just exactly what I've described. But in all this, we have heard our people. Many of us who are representatives elected here spent the better part of the past few months going through the length and the breadth of the country, listening to our people. Sibazwile abantu bakithi, bekhuluma nathi, singena siphuma ezindlini zabo. Roba pfabothe, hote erachimbira hona. Diamba na he hachimbira bo Maimani, he hachimbira bo Julius Malema, lapho kuhambe khona u-Honorable Buthelezi, naye uzwile ukuthi abantu bathini. Where Mr. Groenewald also went, as we saw him traveling through the length and the breadth of the country, he kan ook sê dat he had immense gehoor. Honorable Meshwe as well went throughout the country, and he will also testify that he has heard our people. Honorable Holomisa did exactly the same, as he also interacted with our people. Honorable Zungula did the same, and Honorable Delil also went through the length and the breadth of the country and listened very carefully to our people. Honorable Gola, Honorable Likota did exactly the same as well, and he listened. Honorable Nyocho and Honorable Hendricks, all of us went through the country and we listened to our people. And through the elections that we held in May, our people, you all South Africans, provided us with a clear mandate, a mandate that talks about growth, a mandate that talks about renewal. Much as we differed in the way that we delivered our messages to all South Africans, in the end, it was a message about growth and renewal. The persistent legacy of apartheid has left our country with extreme structural problems, both economic and social. At the same time, we are having to contend with rapid technological change that is ushering in a new world of work, that is reshaping the global economy, and that is redefining social relations. Together with all the nations of the world, we are confronted by the most devastating changes in global climate in human history. The extreme weather conditions associated with the warming of the atmosphere threaten our economy. They threaten the lives and the livelihoods of our people, and unless we act now, we threaten our own very existence. We have heard the voices of young people also who marched to this building, to the union buildings rather, last week, urging us to take action to protect our planet. It was to address these fundamental challenges that we adopted the National Development Plan in 2012 to guide our national effort to defeat poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Many of the parties represented here endorsed and embraced the National Development Plan. However, with 10 years to go before we reach 2030, we have not made nearly enough progress in meeting the NDP targets. And unless we take extraordinary measures, we will not realize Vision 2030. This means that we need to prioritize. We need to focus on those actions that will have the greatest impact, actions that will catalyze faster movement forward, both in the immediate term and over the next 10 years. It is worth noting that the medium-term strategic framework, which is a translation of how we read the NDP into government program, for the last 5 years has had more than 1,100 indicators by which we were to measure progress in the implementation of the NDP. But now is the time to focus on what needs to be done. Now is the time for implementation. And it is for this reason that as we went throughout the country, our people were saying, talking time is over. We now want action. We want implementation, and we want it now. And it is this that we have to offer our people. It is this that we need to give our people to continue having the hope of a better South Africa that will deliver a better life for them. And it is time to make choices. Some of these choices may be difficult, and some of them may not please everyone. In an economy that is not growing at the level where we want it to grow, and at a time when public finances are limited, we will not be able to do everything at one time. As we enter this new administration, we will need to focus, and we want to focus on 7 priorities. Economic transformation and job creation is at the top of our priorities. Education, skills, and health is the second. Consolidating the social wage through reliable and quality basic services is another important priority. Special integration, human settlements, and improving local government is another important priority. Social cohesion and safe communities is a key priority as well. And building a capable and ethical and developmental state is an important priority too. And the last one is building a better Africa and a better world. All our programs and policies across all departments and agencies will be directed in pursuit of these overarching tasks that we believe will be able to deliver a better life for all South Africans. At the same time, we must restore the National Development Plan to its place at the center of our national effort, to make it alive, to make it part of the lived experience of the people of our country. At the inauguration, we said that this must be seen as a defining moment for our young nation. A nation that is facing enormous challenges, but a nation that consists of 57 million people who stood up over the years and defeated one of the most terrible systems ever put together by human beings, apartheid. a nation of people with courage, a nation of people who have great commitment. We are the 57 million South Africans who refused to give in, who determined that we are going to change our life and our country for the better. And this is the moment where we are now. We also said that this is the moment where through our actions, now we will be able to determine our destiny. As South Africa enters the next 25 years of democracy and in pursuit of the objectives of our national plan, let us proclaim a bold and ambitious goal, a unifying purpose to which we dedicate all our resources and our energies. Let us be a people who are prepared to go where we have never been before. Let us be a people who are bold and are prepared to take bold steps to move our country forward. As we enter the last decade of Vision 2030, let us even be more clearly be able to define South Africa to be a South Africa that we want and agree that the concrete actions will be necessary for us to achieve the South Africa we want. To ensure that our efforts are directed, I am suggesting that within the priorities of this administration, we agree on 5 fundamental goals for the next decade, which are part of these 7 priorities. Let us agree as a nation and as a people united in our aspirations that within the next 10 years, we will make progress in tackling poverty, inequality, and unemployment, where no person in South Africa will go hungry. Yes, where no one amongst us, as we look at all our people, will be a person who goes hungry. And this is a bold plan for the next 10 years, and I believe we can achieve it. Our economy, we should declare, should grow at a much faster rate than the growth of our population year by year. We should also be bold enough to say 2 million more young people will be in employment in the next 10 years. We should also tackle one other important area, which is education, where we say in the next 10 years we want a South Africa which has better educational outcomes, and that every 10-year-old in our country will be able to read for meaning. And where we also say that violent crime will be halved, if not eliminated. Let us make these commitments now to ourselves and to each other, knowing that they will stretch our resources and capabilities, but understanding that if we achieve these goals, we will fundamentally have transformed our country. We set these ambitious goals not despite the severe difficulties of the present, but because of them. Honorable Malema, I'm coming to land. We set these goals so that the decisions we take now are bolder and that we should act with greater urgency. Our determination that within the next decade that no person in South Africa will go hungry is fundamental to our effort to eradicate poverty and to reduce inequality as well. In addition to creating employment and other economic opportunities, this means that we must strengthen the social wage and reduce the cost of living. It means we must improve the affordability, safety, and integration of commuter transport and low-income households. While we have made great progress in providing housing, many South Africans, and this we heard very clearly as all of us were campaigning during the May elections, many South Africans still do not have land to build homes and to earn livelihoods. In the next 5 years, we will accelerate the provision of well-located housing and land to poor South Africans. To improve the quality of life of South Africans, to reduce poverty in all its ramifications and dimensions, and to strengthen our economy, we will also need to attend to the health of our people. We must attend to the capacity as well as the effectiveness of our hospitals and clinics. An 80-year-old grandmother cannot and should not spend an entire day in a queue in a hospital or a clinic waiting for her medication. An ill patient cannot be turned away because there is a shortage of doctors or nurses or even medication in our clinics and hospitals. A woman in labor should not and cannot have her unborn child's life put in danger because the ambulance has just taken too long to arrive. As part of the work that we must do urgently to improve the quality of the health system, we are finalizing the Presidential Health Summit Compact, which draws on the insights and will mobilize the capabilities of all key stakeholders to address the crisis in our clinics and hospitals. We are far advanced in revising the National Health Insurance Detailed Plan of Implementation, including accelerating quality of care initiatives in public facilities, building human resource capacity, establishment of the NHI fund, and the costing of the administration for the fund. We remain concerned about rising HIV infection rates, particularly amongst young women, and the relatively low numbers of men testing for HIV and starting treatment. We will intensify our work to implement the 1990 strategy to end HIV as a public health threat, which includes increasing the number of people on treatment by at least another 2 million by December 2020. If we are able to succeed in addressing these challenges, the challenge of poverty across society will be reduced. It is therefore a matter of great concern that there are a number of children of school-going age with disabilities who are not in school. This is a matter that all of us as South Africans should be concerned about. In responding to these challenges, we have moved the coordination of disability initiatives to the center of government in the presidency. We have revived the Presidential Working Group on Disability and will submit the protocol on the rights of persons with disabilities in Africa to Parliament this year for ratification. To address the problems of working poor, the national minimum wage has been in place now for 6 months, and there are early indications that there are many companies who are now complying. A number of companies have applied for exemptions, but we get indications that a number of companies are indeed complying, which is a pleasing development. The National Wage Commission is expected to conclude research on the impact of the minimum wage on employment, on poverty, inequality, and wage differentials by the end of September this year. We cannot turn our fortunes around without a relentless focus on economic growth. Within the next decade, it is our ambition that our economy should be growing at a far greater rate than our population growth, as I said. It is only when we reach consistently high rates of economic growth that we will be able to reverse the economic damage of our past. We make this assertion at a time when the economic outlook is extremely weak. Now, following the sharp contraction in growth in the first quarter, the Reserve Bank now projects that growth in 2019 is likely to be lower than anticipated in the February budget. One reason for the lackluster economic performance has been the load shedding early this year, together with the continued uncertainty of the supply of electricity and the state of Eskom. The lesson is clear. For growth, we need reliable and sustainable supply of electricity. Eskom, as we all know, is facing serious financial, operational, and structural problems. Since the load shedding earlier this year, Eskom has, however, made much progress in implementing their 9-point plan, ensuring better maintenance of its generation fleet, reducing costs as much as they possibly can, and ensuring adequate reserves of coal. Now, in line with the recommendations of both the Eskom Sustainability Task Team and the Technical Review Team, Eskom is deploying its most skilled and experienced personnel to where they are needed most. The Deputy President and the ministers have been working very closely with these task teams to ensure that indeed we do give Eskom the necessary support. The utilities' financial position remains a matter of great concern, though. With the current committed funding from the government, which was outlined in the 2019 budget, Eskom has sufficient cash to meet its obligations until the end of October 2019. For Eskom to default on its loans will cause a cross-default on its remaining debt and would have a huge impact on the already constrained fiscus. We will therefore have to address this matter, and we will address it by tabling a special appropriation bill on an urgent basis to allocate significant portion of the 230 billion fiscal support that Eskom will require over the next 10 years in early years. This we must do because Eskom is too vital to our economy and it cannot be allowed to fail. Eskom is our collective responsibility as a nation, and we must make sure that we support it. Now, further details on this, so that we don't get too excited, will be provided by the Minister of Finance in due course. We will announce as Eskom carries on to address all these issues. We will announce a new CEO following Mr. Pakamani Hadebe stepping down. He came in at a very difficult time at Eskom and has done a great deal together with the board that is led by Mr. Jabu Mabuza to stabilize the company. We will soon also be appointing a chief restructuring officer who will be expected to reposition Eskom financially with careful attention to the mix between revenue, debt, and cost structure of the company. Now, Eskom is also working with government and other stakeholders to address its broad restructuring plan, which we announced, as well as its overall debt, including the debt that is owed by municipalities as well as individuals. As a country, we must assert the principle that those who use electricity must pay for the electricity that they use. Failure to pay endangers our entire electricity supply, our economy, and our efforts to create jobs. Now, the days of boycotting payments are over. This is now the time to build, and it is the time for all of us to make our contribution. So we call on all our people who use electricity, let us pay up so that Eskom must continue to do the work that it should do for all South Africans. Now, fellow South Africans and honorable members, to meet our growth targets, we will rebuild the foundations of our economy by revitalizing and expanding the productive sectors of our economy. This requires us to reimagine our industrial strategy, to unleash private investment and energize the state to boost economic inclusion. It requires the state to effectively play its role as an enabler that provides infrastructure, that provides basic services, a regulator role as well, that sets the rules, that create equitable opportunities for all players, and a redistributor that ensures that the most vulnerable in society are protected and given a chance to live up to their full potential. But there is another role that we want the state to play, and that is what I would call an entrepreneurial role, a role through which the state is able to take some risks and enable the economy to move forward. We will give priority attention to the economic sectors that have the greatest potential for growth. Drawing on our successes in the automotive sector, we will implement master plans developed with business and labor in industries like clothing and textiles, gas, chemicals and plastics, renewables, steel and metals, and fabrication sectors. We're going to substantially expand the agriculture and agro-processing sector by supporting key value chains and products, developing new markets, and reducing our reliance on agricultural imports. We will bolster the mining industry by developing markets for South African minerals through targeted beneficiation, reduced costs of inputs, and increased research and development. Through special interventions like special economic zones, reviving local industrial parks, business centers, digital hubs, and township and village enterprises, we will bring economic development to local areas. We will also focus on small, medium enterprises in our cities, in our townships, and our villages, and create marketplaces where entrepreneurs can trade and sell their products. We will make good on our ambition to more than double international tourist arrival to 21 million by 2030. This will be achieved through the renewal of the country's brand, introducing a world-class visa regime, and a significant focus on key markets that have the potential of boosting our tourism. Markets such as China, India, and indeed the arrivals from the rest of our continent. We are determined to ensure that tourists who come to our country are safe. We will expand our high-tech industry by ensuring that the legal and regulatory framework promotes innovation, scaling up skills development for young people in new technologies and reducing data costs. Wherever we have gone, young people have continuously raised the issue of the excessive high data costs in South Africa. They want data costs to go down. Now, to provide impetus to this process, within the next month, the Minister of Communications will issue the policy direction to ICASA to commence the spectrum licensing process. Now, this process obviously will include measures to promote competition, transformation, inclusive growth of the sector, and universal access. This is a vital part of bringing down the costs of data. We call on the telecommunications industry to bring down the cost of data so that it is in line with the pricing that prevails in other markets in the world. We are intensifying our investment drive. Of the 300 billion rand of investments announced at our inaugural investment conference last year, just over 250 billion worth of projects have entered implementation phase. We continue to build a pipeline of investments which will be showcased at the second South African Investment Conference to be held from the 5th to the 7th of November. At a time of uncertainty, the work of the investment envoys that we appointed has built important bridges between government and the business sector. From their feedback, it is clear that much more still needs to be done to improve the investment climate in our country. This includes reviewing the way government coordinates work to resolve challenges that are faced by investors and reforming our investment promotion policy and architecture. Good progress has been made through the Public-Private Growth Initiative, which is being championed by Minister Dlamini Zuma, Mr. Rolf Meyer, and Dr. Van Zyl Slabbert. The private sector has committed to invest 840 billion rand in 43 projects over 19 sectors, creating what they have arrived at as 155,000 jobs in the next 5 years. Now, in discussions with business, government has committed to remove policy impediments and accelerate implementation of these projects. We are urgently working on a set of priority reforms to improve the ease of doing business by consolidating and streamlining regulatory processes, automating permits and other applications, and reducing the cost of compliance. Infrastructure, as we all know, is a critical area of investment that supports structural transformation, growth, and job creation. It is essential to our economic rejuvenation, to giving meaning and effect to our new dawn. Our new approach to infrastructure development is based on stronger partnerships between the public and private sector and with local communities. It includes a special package of financial and institutional measures to boost construction and prioritize water infrastructure, roads, student accommodation through a more efficient use of budgeted money. As announced in the previous SONA, government has set aside 100 billion rand to seed the infrastructure fund. We are working to institutionalize the fund, which will be managed by the Development Bank of Southern Africa, with the newly configured Department of Public Works and Infrastructure playing an oversight role. We've been doing consultation with private investors, such as pension funds, who are enthusiastic about participating in the infrastructure fund that we announced. The reforms that we will embark on will ensure better planning of infrastructure projects, rigorous feasibility and preparatory work, improved strategic management, impeccable execution, and better governance. This will provide a much-needed boost to the construction sector, which has been in the doldrums for quite a while. We will stimulate local demand and grow South African manufacturing by making sure that we encourage everyone to buy local. We call on all South Africans to deliberately and consistently buy locally made goods. Now, to demonstrate this, the suit that I'm wearing today, the tie I am wearing today, the shirt that I'm wearing today. Don't get too ambitious and ask about other things. Now, this suit was locally made, I'm happy to say, by South African textile workers working at the House of Monatic here in Salt River in Cape Town. Now, if all of us buy locally made clothes, we will be able to drive up demand, which will inject a lot of growth in our economy. Within this next year, we seek to conclude agreements with retailers to stock more South African goods on their shelves and to actively promote the great products made by South African workers. At the same time, we will promote our products more actively in the rest of our African continent and to the world. These measures are underpinned by our strong commitment to a macroeconomic and fiscal policy framework that will continue to boost confidence and investment. We are committed to prudent borrowing and stringent expenditure management to stabilize our public finances and lower the debt trajectory. The South African Reserve Bank is a critical institution of our democracy, enjoying wide credibility and standing within the country and internationally. Price stability is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for economic growth. Rising prices of goods and services erode the purchasing power of all South Africans, but especially the poor. Inflation further undermines the competitiveness of our exports and our import competing firms, putting industries and jobs at risk. For these reasons, our constitution mandates the South African Reserve Bank to protect the value of our currency in the interests of balanced and sustainable growth. Today, we reaffirm this constitutional mandate, which the Reserve Bank must pursue independently without fear, favor, or prejudice. Our Constitution also requires that, listen carefully, our Constitution also requires that there should be regular consultation between the Reserve Bank and the Minister of Finance to do what? To promote macroeconomic coordination in all the interests, all in the interests of employment creation and economic growth. Now, if we are to be internationally competitive, if we are to attract investment, we must address the high cost of doing business in South Africa and complicated and lengthy regulatory processes. We must reach a point where no company should need to wait for more than 6 months for a permit or a license, and new companies should be able to be registered within a day. We will continue to reduce the cost of doing business by reducing port-export tariffs, lowering costs of electricity generation options. Guided by the NDP, it is our responsibility to pursue inclusive, sustainable development that is resilient in the face of climate change. Working in partnership with the private sector, with labor, and the international community, we will step up our adaptation and mitigation efforts. We have the opportunity to be at the forefront of the green growth, of low carbon industrialization, of pioneering new technologies and taking quantum leaps towards the economy of the future. We must increase the contribution of renewable and clean energy to our national energy mix and explore the potential of the hydrogen economy as well. Faster economic growth also requires accelerated land reform in rural and urban areas and a clear property rights regime. We have received the report of the Presidential Advisory Panel on Land Reform that was being led by the Deputy President, which will now be presented to Cabinet for consideration. The panel's recommendations will inform the finalization of a comprehensive, far-reaching and transformative land reform program. In the immediate term, government will accelerate efforts to identify and release public land that is suitable for smart urban settlements as well as for farming. In the stimulus and recovery package announced last year, we promised to prioritize funding for emerging farmers. Over the medium-term budget period, 3.9 billion rand has been allocated to the Land Bank to support black commercial farmers. An essential part of South Africa's growth strategy is the integration of our economy with those of our neighbors and the rest of our continent. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area will improve the movement of goods and services as well as capital and means of production across the continent. Our revitalized industrial strategy focuses on the expansion of our trade and investment links with Southern Africa, as well as the continent at large. Within the SADC region, we will prioritize development of cross-border value chains in key sectors such as energy, mining, mineral beneficiation, manufacturing, infrastructure, and agro-processing. Now, the growth of our economy will have little value unless it creates employment on a far greater scale. The fact that the unemployment rate among young people is more than 50% is essentially a national crisis. It's a crisis that demands urgent, innovative, coordinated solutions where all of us should see it as a requirement that we should work together. And because more young people are entering the labor force every year, the economy needs to create far more jobs for the youth than it currently does. The brutal reality is that when it comes to youth unemployment, we have to run just to remain in the same place. It is therefore essential that we proceed without delay to implement a comprehensive plan driven and coordinated from the presidency to create no fewer than 2 million new jobs for young people within the next decade. This plan will work across government departments and all 3 tiers of government in partnership with the private sector. We are already working with the private sector to create pathways into work for young people through scaling up existing pathway management networks. These are networks that allow young people who opt in increased visibility, network support, and opportunities to signal their availability for jobs and self-employment. They make sure that young people from poor households and young women in particular are empowered to take up the new opportunities. Government will continue to provide employment through the expanded public works program, especially in labor-intensive areas like maintenance, clearing vegetation, plugging water leaks, and constructing roads. We will continue to develop programs to ensure that economically excluded young people are work-ready and are absorbed into sectors where jobs demand is growing. These sectors include global business processing services, agricultural value chains, technical installation, repair and maintenance, and new opportunities provided through the digital economy and the fourth industrial revolution. Government will also ensure that young people are employed in the social economy. We will expand the National Youth Service to take on 50,000 young people a year. Now, government will support tech-enabled platforms for self-employed young people in rural areas and townships. We will expand our programs to enable young people to gain paid workplace experience through initiatives like the Youth Employment Service and also facilitating work-based internships. We're going to roll out small business incubation centers throughout the country to provide youth-driven startups with financial and technical advice as they begin their journeys. Now, yesterday I had the great privilege to meet and engage in dialogue with several young South Africans who are doing simply amazing work to build our country and develop our economy. They are entrepreneurs and community builders and activists and artists. If there is one thing we have learned from our engagements with this country's youth, it is that we cannot impose solutions on them. Everything that has to be done must be led by young people themselves. They have told us very clearly what they want and what they also need. They want to be employed, yes, but they also want to become employers. They are brimming with ideas and they are at the forefront of innovation and they want to do things for themselves. We have to support the fire of entrepreneurship that resides in them because the fortunes of this country depend on the energies and the creative talent of young people. If we are to ensure that within the next decade, every 10-year-old will be able to read for meaning, we will need to mobilize the entire nation behind a massive reading campaign. early reading is the basic foundation that determines a child's educational progress through school, through higher education, and into the workplace. All foundation and intermediate phase teachers are to be trained to teach reading in English and other African languages, and we are training and deploying a cohort of experienced coaches to provide high-quality on-site support to our teachers. This forms part of the broader effort to strengthen the basic education system by empowering school leadership teams, improving the capabilities of teachers, and ensuring a more consistent measurement of progress for grades 3, 6, and 9. We also have to prepare our young people for the jobs of the future. That is why we are introducing subjects like coding and data analytics at a primary level school. The South Africa we want is a country where all people are safe and feel safe. Let us therefore work together to ensure that violent crime is at least half by the next decade. The first step is to increase police visibility by employing more police women and men, and also to create a more active role for citizens through effective community policing forums. Currently, there are 5,000 students registered for basic training in our police training colleges, and we envisage that this number will increase to 7,000 per cycle over the next 2 intakes. We are working to improve success rates in investigating and prosecuting crimes and to ensure better training and professionalism throughout the criminal justice system. Violent crime, as we all know, is a societal problem that requires a society-wide response. We are working with civil society organizations to end gender-based violence and femicide. Following intensive consultations and engagements, we are working towards the establishment of a gender-based violence and femicide council and a national strategic plan that will guide all of us wherever we are in our efforts to eradicate this national scourge. We are capacitating and equipping the police as well as the court system to support survivors of gender-based violence. We are stepping up the fight against drug syndicates through the implementation of the National Anti-Gang Strategy and the revised National Drug Master Plan. The achievement of all these objectives naturally requires a capable and developmental state. This is a state that not only provides the institutions and infrastructure that enable the economy and society to operate, but that has the means to drive the transformation that we need. Earlier this month, we announced the reconfiguration of a number of government departments to enable them to deliver on their mandates. Our decision was premised on efficiency, cost containment, cooperative governance, and strategic alignment. This is the start of a wider process of arresting the decline in state capacity and restructuring our model of service delivery so that it best serves the citizens of our country. We will be adopting a district-based approach, focusing on the 44 districts and the 8 metros in our country to speed up service delivery, ensuring that municipalities are properly supported and adequately resourced as well. To ensure that the state is able to effectively enable economic and social development, it is essential that we strengthen our state-owned enterprises. Now, through the Presidential SOE Council, government intends to create alignment between all state-owned companies and to better define their respective mandates. Through the Council, we will work with the leadership of the SOEs in the form of their boards and their CEOs to develop a legal and regulatory environment that promotes innovation and agility and enhances their competitiveness. We will build on the work we have already begun to address problems of poor governance, inefficiency, and financial sustainability. We are committed to building an ethical state in which there is no place for corruption, patronage, rent-seeking, and the plundering of public money. We want a corps of skilled and professional public servants of the highest moral standards and dedicated to public service. The decisive steps we have taken to end state capture and fight corruption, including measures to strengthen the NPA, the SIU, SARS, and state security, are achieving important results. But there is still much more work that we need to do. We have asked the National Director of Public Prosecutions to develop a plan to significantly increase the capacity and effectiveness of the NPA, including to ensure effective asset seizure or forfeiture. We need to ensure that public money stolen is returned and used to deliver services and much needed basic infrastructure. We expect that the new SIU Special Tribunal will start work within the next few months to fast-track civil claims arising from SIU investigations, which are currently estimated to be around 14.7 billion rand. On our relations with the world, South Africa will continue to play an active role in the quest for global peace and security, people-centered development and prosperity for all. We renew our determination to work in concert with the international community to preserve and protect the rule-based multilateral system with the United Nations at its head. We will use our membership of the UN Security Council to promote the peaceful resolution of disputes, particularly on our own continent. If we are to achieve the South Africa that we want, we need a new social compact. We need to forge durable partnerships between government, business, labor, and civil society. This places a responsibility on each one of us. Government must create an enabling environment. It must use public resources wisely and invest in developing the country's human capital. We would like business to consider the country's national strategic objectives and social considerations in their decisions and in the commercial actions that they embark upon. We agree that labor should advance the interests of workers while at the same time promoting the sustainability of businesses and the creation of jobs. Civil society needs to continue to play its role in holding government to account, but must also join us in practical actions to attain our common goals. We look to parties in this parliament to be a vital part of this partnership, lending support, insights, coming up with practical solutions, and all this being done in the national interest. This social compact requires a contribution from everyone. It will also need sacrifices and trade-offs. It is upon the conduct of each that the fate of all of us depends. If we are to reinvigorate the implementation of the National Development Plan, we must cast our sights on the broadest of horizons. We want a South Africa wherein all enjoy comfort and prosperity. But we also want a South Africa where we will stretch our capacities to the fullest and where we advance along the superhighway of progress. We want a South Africa that has prioritized its rail networks and is producing high-speed trains connecting our megacities and the remotest areas of our country. We should imagine a country where a bullet train passes through Johannesburg as it travels to Messina and it stops in Buffalo City on the way from eThekwini to here in Cape Town. Yes, we want a South Africa with a high-tech economy where advances in e-health, in robotics, and remote medicine are applied as we roll out the national health insurance. What type of South Africa do we want? We want a South Africa that does not simply export its raw materials, but has become a manufacturing hub for key components used in electronics, in automobiles, and in computers. We want a country also that can feed itself, that harnesses the latest advances in smart agriculture. Now, I dream of a South Africa where the first entirely new city built in the democratic era rises with skyscrapers, schools, universities, hospitals, and factories. This dream that I have has been fueled by conversations that I've had with four wonderful people. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Naledi Pandor, Ms. Jessie Duarte, President Xi Jinping of China, whose account of a China that is now building a new city 100 kilometers from Beijing. Now that has helped to fuel the dream that I have. This is a dream that we can all share and participate in building. Now, what we have not done since the dawn of democracy is we have not built a brand new city in the last 25 years. 75% of South Africans are going to be living in urban areas by 2030. The cities of Johannesburg, Tshwane, Cape Town, and eThekwini are running out of space to accommodate all those who throng to the cities. Has the time not arrived for us to be bold, to reach beyond ourselves and do what we believe is impossible? Has the time not arrived to build a new smart city founded on the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution? Now, I would like to invite South Africans. Yes, where and when. Now, listen carefully. I would like to invite South Africans to begin imagining this prospect. We are the South African nation that with its constitution gives hope to the hopeless. rights to the dispossessed and marginalized. Though we may have faltered, we have not forgotten. We are still that nation. You may ask why I am hopeful. I am hopeful about the many things that we can create, the many things that we can build. I am hopeful because I have worked with the people of this country, the nurses, the health workers, our men and women in uniform, the teachers in our schools, the students who, despite their families' hardships, are determined to succeed, and the youth who are trying to start their own businesses, to invent and create and to rise above their circumstances. If you who give me courage, the people of this country, are able to have dreams, these are dreams and expectations that our people have. What do our people dream of? They dream of a better life for all South Africans. They dream of a life where their children will be able to get an education and a job. They dream, many South Africans dream of starting their own businesses. Now, working together, there is nothing that we cannot achieve. There is nothing that we cannot do. And there is nothing that is impossible to us. Now, all this remains with the doers who are able to get the work done, the doers who are able to have a clear intent on what needs to be done, the people who don't sit by the sidelines and criticize and just scream and shout. Yes, it is these people who fuel, who inspire the people of South Africa. They are the people who look up to those who are able to look forward and see a South Africa that is successful. Ibanu balaba kokore South Africa leya hina iya mahlweni indlela ya kahle. Libene bo bane bakori Africa chipembe hey noni yashu bako toda uri iye phanda ibe na mvela phanda ine ya do bonwa nga bathu bote. Now, as we enter this new era, an era where we are determined to implement the plans that I have outlined, where we are also prepared to imagine a future which may seem impossible right now, where we are able to imagine things that are impossible. This is the South Africa that we must go for. This is the South Africa that should fuel us, inspire us, and make us move forward. Now, let us take to heart the words of Ben Okri when he says, "Will you be at the harvest among the gatherers of new fruits? Then you must begin today to remake your mental and spiritual world and join the warriors and celebrants of freedom, the realizers of great dreams. You can't remake the world without remaking yourself. It is indeed when you can imagine this South Africa that we are seeking to build that you can remake yourself." He continues to say, "Each new era begins within. It is an inward event with unsuspected possibilities. for inner liberation. We could use it to turn on our inward lights. We could use it to use even the dark and negative things positively. We could use the new era to clean our eyes, to see the world differently, to see ourselves more clearly. Only free people can make a free world. Infect the world with your light. Help fulfill the golden prophecies. Press forward the human genius that resides within you. Our future is greater than our past. Close quotes. Fellow South Africans, it is this that in the time of challenge that we've got to start imagining. It is this at a time when our country faces great challenges that we've got to look beyond the horizon and see a South Africa with a growing economy, see a South Africa with our young people employed, and see a South Africa that is winning, a South Africa that is determined to move forward. Now, all I want to end by saying is that this is the South Africa that our people yearn for. This is the South Africa that all South Africans have said they want to see. Let us go on and build this South Africa. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, I wish to take this opportunity to thank the Honorable, the President, for his address. After I adjourned the sitting, members and guests should please remain at their places until the procession has left the chamber. The guests in the gallery should remain seated until the ushers indicate that the doors are open. The procession led by the Sergeant at Arms and the usher will leave the chamber in the following order: the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces.
And that wraps up the State of the Nation address for 2019 and officially opens the 6th democratically elected parliament. So those words echoing at the end, our future is greater than our past. And that's our president taking the words of Ben Akri. And it's really quite telling to see how everybody's reacted to that. And that's exactly what we're going to get you right now, is the reaction from parliamentarians as they come out, different MPs, and also in studio we've still got our financial expert who's going to be giving us some of his feedback. But before we talk in studio, let's go to the red carpet straight away. Lulama is there. Lulama, who have you managed to get?
Thanks, Leanne. With me, I've got the leader of the Freedom Front Plus, Dr. Peter Groenewald. Dr. Groenewald, the president spoke about having violent crimes. And I guess that includes murders in the township that are violent, and farm murders that are violent for both workers and farm owners. Your comment about that?
Well, firstly, everybody will welcome that. But the reality is something different. And I want to say, the president has got a very nice dream. But unfortunately, when he wakes up, he will find out he's living in a nightmare. Referring to the violent crime, he referred, for instance, that the system with the judiciary and the police must be updated. At this moment, we started in 2012. to try to make the fingerprints of the police compatible with the services of the country as a whole, with Home Affairs. Up till now, we could not succeed only doing that. So it's very nice to have such statements to make and say we have to halve it. But we will look further into it. Our view is still bring back specialized units. That's the only real way to really curb violent crime in South Africa.
Generally, your overview of the speech?
Well, again, it's a wish list from the President, but he doesn't come forward with concrete ways how we're going to obtain these objectives. Yes, he's got a couple of things he's mentioned to say there should be cooperation between the private sector, the government, and even the trade unions. But the fact of the matter is that if he does not curb the powers of the unions in South Africa, we won't have that progress. We also say, if you look at Eskom, he's going to speed up to ensure that taxpayers' monies are more available. And he said, people must realize that if you want electricity, you have to pay for that. We said that since 1994. And the question is, what and how is he going to ensure that that happens? Are they going to cut off the electricity? We wait to see what is going to happen.
That was the Freedom Front Plus leader, Dr. Pieter Groenewald, and I'm crossing to my colleague, Bulelani.
Well, thank you so much, Lulu. Of course, I'm standing right here in front of the National Assembly, a scrum of the media, as I bring into the conversation Mr. Mmusi Maimane, the leader of the official opposition. Yeah. You called for a practical solution to the country's problem. Yeah. Does this speech give that assurance to the DA?
Well, South Africa today faces some very deep crisis. We've got some real problems at Eskom. We've got real challenges with people being unemployed. And today the president didn't give a plan. He instead described the challenges of South Africans, but really no tangible plans. There was no tangible plan on rural safety, no tangible plan on what are we going to do at Eskom. More rhetoric coming from the president, talking about, in fact, a different departure even from February, where he talked about unbundling. This time around, he's speaking about a stimulus plan that goes into that. So the deep disappointment with the speech today was the fact that it was all based on allegory, a dream, but really no tangible plans as to how we get us in the next 5 years. And South Africans are in pain. We should have seen more deliberate plan, more reforms by the president, and none were forthcoming.
You must be happy around the assurances on the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank.
It's espoused in our constitution. Saying that is not anything new. The fact on the table is that our constitution gives the mandate of the Reserve Bank. The problem that the president faces is that his party doesn't agree with the position that he's taken. There will be a motion here in Parliament challenging that very issue, and the ANC's resolution is against that. So these are all, again, more language coming from the president, but no party to back him on, no money to finance it, and no tangible plans to make sure actually we put investment into our economic growth, stimulate city-led economic growth, and make sure that our citizens are safer by giving more policing power to provinces so that we can actually bring the change. No, we can talk about the number of police, but how do we capacitate policing so that actually we're able to keep our citizens safe? Very little mention on corruption. Money was stolen. This speech was about addressing the mess that the ANC has created and failed to give a plan about the hope that all South Africans must look forward to.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Mmusi Maimane. He is, of course, the leader of the DA. For more reaction, we're going to cross to the other side of the precinct. Mzwandi Lembeje is standing by.
Thank you very much, Bulelani. Of course, we are getting reactions from various political parties. With me is the leader of the ACDP, Reverend Kenneth Meshwe. The president has spoken about dreaming big. Are you convinced?
Well, it was a very nice dream speech. For 25 years, many of our people have been dreaming. Those who are in tertiary have been dreaming to get jobs, and they've not gotten jobs. And many of those who do not have houses, who are in shanty houses, have been dreaming of having proper houses. So when we talk about dreams, many people are going to say, and we are saying as the ACDP, it is not the first time South Africans dream. We are surprised that the president is only dreaming now, when South Africans have been dreaming for 25 years. What was positive was to hear that the Reserve Bank is going to be allowed to continue being independent, because that is what the investors wanted to hear. And for as long as there is no interference with the Reserve Bank, because we know that whenever the state interferes, SOEs are a classic example. There is no progress, there is no success. That is why we are grateful, at least, that the Reserve Bank will be left as it is. It will ensure that the rand is stabilized. So what we also want to hear is how the economy is going to be improved, how the economy is going to turn the corner. The president did not give the specifics. It was, as usual, the what you are planning to do, what you are dreaming about, and not the how. And what we wanted to hear was, how is it going to happen? How are we going to ensure that the economy creates jobs? How are we going to show that many people we see on a daily basis in the streets looking for jobs are going to get jobs? So he disappointed us by not giving us the specifics of how it is going to happen.
Thank you very much, Reverend. There is Reverend Kenneth Mesha there, basically saying, whilst what the president was saying was right, he is not happy that there was no how. And my colleague Lulama on the other side.
Thanks, Mzwai. With me, I've got the UDM Chief Whip, Ngabayomsi Kwankwa. Mr. Kwankwa, the President talked about appropriation bill that they are going to introduce to Parliament to address ESCOM challenges. What do you make of that?
Well, it's nice English for a bailout. It's once again a bailout that is given to state-owned enterprises that are failing to manage their resources properly. It's what government has been doing under Zuma. It's a continuation of what President Zuma was doing in his government. It means there's no real intention or clear plan to try and turn around the state-owned enterprises. But the second issue is that the president here, we must first take credit, because we must say that the speed train he was talking about comes out straight out of the UDM manifesto. The third issue is that there are a lot of statements of hope without any clear targets in the short term, meaning it's another wish list, a laundry list of promises of things that they would like to do, and hopefully they are going to do them without being able to even quantify them at this point in time. Because what you'd be looking at is to say, in the medium to long term, what are some of the quantifiable objectives that they would like to achieve, and then move to decades and half a decade and 20 years and all of that, which are nice things to say, but in a decade from now, President Ramaphosa won't be here.
The President also addressed the issue of the independence of the Reserve Bank, which has been topical recently. What do you think about that?
I know the President, I think it is only the latter part of his statement which showed a bit of understanding of the politics of the central bank. Look, the issue here is not really about the mandate of the central bank in terms of Section 224 of the Constitution. It's about the interpretation of that mandate by the central bank, because most of us view it as a very narrow interpretation of the central bank. The central bank at some point needs to have a secondary objective, which is about, for instance, employment creation, which is about socio-economic development. It can't just be about price stability at all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly.
I will now go to my colleague Mzwai, who is standing by with EFF leader Julius Malema.
Well, with me again is the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema. As the president was speaking, there were some points he wanted to raise, but of course the president said, wait a bit, that issue that he wanted addressed would be addressed. So the president has spoken. He spoke about the issues of land. He spoke about the Reserve Bank. As the EFF, you've had very strong views on that one. Are you happy? Are you supportive of the statement?
The president said nothing about the land. That which the president has said is going to happen is what has been happening, and has not delivered the land to our people. The ANC has abandoned the agenda to expropriate land without compensation because they make black people stupid. They used it during elections. The elections are over. Instead of expropriating land without compensation, the president is daydreaming. He comes here to tell us about his dreams. The man wanted to be president for the last 10 years. 30 years, for more than 3 decades. He still doesn't know what he wants to do for South Africa, except to tell us that he's dreaming. So if you look at the jobs, he says 2 million jobs in the next 10 years, 200,000 per year. That is against what the national plan says. The national plan speaks about 11 million jobs in 2030. So he will create 2 million jobs by 2029, meaning he has abandoned the national plan. The man spoke about 1 million youth initiatives, employment initiatives. According to their own website, only 6,000 of those opportunities or initiatives were created. None of the things he says here is meaning them. The president was just not saying anything except to tell us that he's dreaming. The days of dreaming are over. He must waken up. He must be woken up by South Africans, because now we need a president who's awake, not a dreaming president.
But don't you share his dream of a better South Africa, of giving 2 million young people jobs, of building cities, of really building railways, high-speed railways?
If you want to build a city, you are a president. I'm an ordinary citizen, I can dream. A president is not allowed to dream. He must say to us, I'm building a new city in this area, by this time it will be done. He doesn't have that privilege of dreaming. When you say a bullet train, where and when? You cannot just talk as a president. You have to have a target. We didn't get that today. We were just told of 2 million jobs which are going to be created in 10 years' time, and that is not going to happen because the national plan, developmental plan, was speaking about that. NDP spoke about 11 million jobs in 2030. Now he speaks about 2 million jobs in 2029, meaning the 11 million ambition of the national development plan has been abandoned. We've got a new plan called Dreams.
But what about the reality of the constraints of our economy? We have seen the construction in the past 2 weeks.
He has to say, guys, the reality is that the economy is not growing at the speed we want, and therefore I've got no ideas. He must be honest like that. He must not create an impression that he's got an ideas. Cyril is playing with us. Cyril wanted to be president in the 90s. Till today, Cyril doesn't know why he wanted to be president, except that he wanted to be president. The only ambition he had was to be president with no plans. And now he's still dreaming. We can't have the privilege of dreaming now. We were dreaming in 1990. We were dreaming in 1985 when OR said render the country ungovernable. We were dreaming of a democratic South Africa where people will be equal and jobs will be available. We can't be dreaming again after 1994. Post-1994 was supposed to be the implementation of the dream of the young lions of the 1976 generation, of the 60s generation. Why are we dreaming now? What happened to the dreams of those who came before us and fought for this democracy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Malema.
Thank you.
That was Julius Malema, the leader of the EFF, really saying the president, as far as he's concerned, said nothing. He only spoke about dreams.
Yes,
my colleague on the other side, Lulama, is waiting.
Thanks, Mzwai. With me, I have the IFP leader, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, I guess, is someone I would say he has seen it all. He has been here in Parliament since 1994, serving under different presidents, until now President Cyril Ramaphosa. Prince, what do you make of this speech?
I would say that actually in all the years that I've been here, I don't think that I remember any SONA where there's such a lot of plaudits, I mean, the applause and so on. Because what the president was saying, unless you are mad, it's something we all desire. But when it comes to action, he says that the time is gone now for planning. This is time for implementation. But then he starts also by saying that our economy is not performing at a rate at which we can do what we would like to do. So it was that kind of mixture. I think that no one can quarrel, with the things that we desire for our country. I think all the things that he says we want our country to be, we agree with them. And we think it's being realistic when he says that, we need implementation. But at the same time, then, he said, he described at one time the performance of the economy as lackluster. In fact, because there are no funds for the country. So if one realizes that the country is afloat, in fact, through borrowing already, one doesn't, I get confused about where the money is going to come from. Because of this mixture of different statements which cannot be reconcilable.
Do you think that his dream of having inequalities, having poverty, having unemployment, and having violent crime is achievable?
I wish they were achievable, and I wish I could believe that they were achievable. But actually, I cannot. Coming as I do from KZN, for instance, where there are so many deaths, you mentioned violence, crime. I cannot imagine where the money is going to come from, because we're already borrowing to keep afloat as a country, because the money is just not there. And even when he talks about economic growth, I mean, the statement has been made just last week that unemployment has gone to 27%, and that in the hope that in so many years it will be reduced to about 14. So honestly, I can understand the applause, because it sounded good. Because in fact, as a statement of intent, I don't think one can fault what he has said. But that's all I can say about it. But when he mentions implementation, there was a big applause. But then we don't hear how the implementation is going to take place.
Yes, that was the IFP leader, Prince Mangoso Buthelezi. I'm now crossing to my colleague, Bulelani.
Right, thank you so much, Lulu. Of course, coming into this State of the Nation address, a lot of opposition parties had a wish list of what they wanted the president to make pronouncements on this evening. Joining me now is Lulama Nchaisa from the AIC. You've been concerned a lot about corruption. Does his speech go far enough in terms of addressing your concerns?
Thank you very much, Bulelani. I'm sure the president did touch on how he's going to deal with corruption, because he's saying he's going to increase the police and the people have got to be safe. So I was happy now when he announced that now he's going to deal with corruption. So it made me very much happy. And again, now coming to education, I did hear the president say now that teachers are going to be retrained so that education has got to be made better, so that the 10-year-old now would be in a position to read and write. That is good for the country, as if the president is aware that country without education cannot grow economy, because these two things, economy and education, have got to go together. And again, the president seems to be very much determined now to do things right for the country now. And again, it believes that we have got to come together to do things together. So believes in cooperation. This was saying, inviting each and every person now to come together so that we can take this country forward. So I did like that. And this now, what I was expecting now was said by the president.
All right, Mr. Lulama Nchaisa, he is, of course, from the AIC. Mzwandi Lembeche is standing by for more reaction.
Thank you very much, Bulelani. Of course, we continue our rolling coverage with reactions from various political parties. With me is the PAC, the deputy leader of the PAC, Mzwanele Nyotso. The president did highlight something about land, and as the PAC, land is an unnegotiable issue for you.
And he moved from a wrong premise from the onset. He gave an impression that the land problem began in 1913, when it is not true. The land problems in this country began in 1652, and since then we've been landless. And secondly, he did not mention how is this going to expropriate land. Even his own policy of expropriation, he did not even talk about it. He spoke about land reform, let alone repossession and restoration of land, which means the government, the president and the ANC was never, and they will never be committed to the land question. Africans must know they are on their own.
They must devise means to get back their land. The government is not going to address it. They don't even talk about it. They don't even tell us when are they going to repeal Section 25. They just need a political will to repeal that section, address the land question, repossess our land, restore the land. But he has not even mentioned those things. He spoke of reforms. That means they are not committed. They will never address it.
Thank you very much. That was the leader of the PAC here in Parliament, Mzwanele Nyoso. Lulu, my colleague on the other side, I guess he's got a guest.
Are you good?
Yes, I am. I've got ANC SG Ace Makashule with me, who's going to tell us what he makes of the speech of the president this evening. SG.
Well, the president's dream is the nation's dream, is the people's dream. Is the dream about what the president has seen and all parties have seen when we walk in the streets of South Africa, of making sure that we address the issues of inequalities, address the issue of land, address the issue of all the resolutions we have actually taken. But implementation of what the president has said is what is actually important. We as a party will be monitoring and making sure that there are clear timelines, and we are very, very, very encouraged and motivated and inspired, because we know from the government Lekgotla there are going to be clear timelines. South Africans are going to know what and when is going to happen.
But SG, South Africans, maybe some of them will say that they didn't hear the president talking about implementation. How are his plans going to be implemented? That is what they want, because they've been waiting and waiting.
Well, President have said ministers are there. They are going to give more details. Remember, this is the State of the Nation address, and it will then be broken down by ministers and the organization. And that dream is realizable. It's practical. It's going to happen. You're going to see new cities. You're going to see the bullet train in South Africa. We are very confident. These are not just dreams, something built up in the sky. These are practical things which are going to happen. You are going to see our children studying robotics. You are going to see the youth actually coming with enterprises. You are going to see rural areas and township areas developing in terms of business. You are going to see companies registered in one day. And it's possible, because it's happening in many other countries.
And also about crime, which he has said that he wants to have violent crimes.
Well, obviously, if you deal with economy, the economy will never be vibrant if we don't address the issue of crime and the issue of violence against women and children, and the issue of violence generally in South Africa. So we are going to make sure, and we are going to be supportive as an organization. We are going to support all the initiatives which government have actually taken and announced. Because as South Africans, we are rallying upon everybody, black and white, rich and poor, literate and illiterate, to go down and make sure that this is what the president has said. He said organized labor, business, civil society, all of us, government, let's come together and work and deliver this dream.
You're saying that as the ANC, you're going to monitor. Are you going to report back to the voters when you're monitoring if the president is indeed living up to what he has said?
We will be reporting back, because we are no more going to go to voters when it's election time. We have learned during that process. We will be reporting every 3 months to voters as to what is happening in government, what is happening in the party.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
That was the ANC SG Ace Makashule. And now I am joined by the good leader, Patricia de Lille, who is coming back to Parliament for the second time, actually. Actually, it's the third time. She was with the PAC, she was the ID leader, and now she is the good leader. Yes. As well as the Minister of Public Works in this new administration. What do you make of this speech this evening?
Well, first of all, I think the President was very honest in admitting all the problems that we have, the economic crisis, the crisis with Eskom. But at the same time, he has also announced very ambitious plans for the next 5 years and the next 10 years. What remains now for all of us is to roll up our sleeves and start implementing, monitoring the implementation, and be held accountable. If all of us pull together in South Africa, we can still save our country.
Do you think he dealt enough with corruption in his speech?
Corruption is an ongoing matter. It's a disease, and many of the people in our country is being infected by the disease of corruption. And you've seen all the commissions, but now government departments must also put systems in place that can detect corruption and prevent corruption and not just always react thereafter. Certainly that's what I plan to do in public works, because I'm responsible for all the public land, all the public buildings, and yes, there's a lot of corruption and we have to clean up the department too.
Talking about public buildings, the public health system, some of the buildings are dilapidated.
Yeah.
What's your plan about that?
Well, you see, there's this cross-cutting whereby clinics are built by public works, but then taken over at an operational level by the health department. And then between the two departments, they blame each other. And so the first thing that I will do is to do an audit and assessment of all the state-owned buildings and put a plan in place to create jobs by doing repairs and maintenance instead of the one department just blaming the other one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lil. That was the good leader, Patricia Dilil. I'm crossing to my colleague, Bulelane.
All right, thank you so much, Lulu. I'm just going to jump straight into it and speak to one of the eminent persons who has been observing from the public gallery the proceedings of SONA. Ndate Andrew Mlangeni, thank you so much for your time. A lot of the issues that have been raised by the president revolve around moral, ethical leadership. Do you think it's going to happen, or is it just lip service?
Well, I don't think it's just talk and talk and talk. He has himself said the people of South Africa are saying, stop talking, let us get into action and solve the problems of South Africa. I think if all of us work together with the government, the private sector and the civil service society, if we work together to implement the decisions taken by the government, the resolutions of solving the problems of South Africa, all of us working together, we will achieve what the president has asked us to achieve.
Is that possible in the context where we see leaders who are deployed to the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces have allegations of corruption hanging over their heads? Is it possible to send a good message to the general population if the ruling party is continuing to send these leaders who are tainted?
The message that we are sending to people is that all those people who are implicated in corruption and are mentioned in the Zondo Commission and other inquiries commissions that are going on, we are going to arrest them. After the commissions have made their report, we are going to arrest them, send them to prison, confiscate the properties that they have bought with stolen money stolen from the people.
All right, and Andrew Mlangeni, thank you so much for your time. Emphatic that he wants those who are implicated in corruption to be arrested. We cross now to Mzwandile Mbeche on the other side.
While we continue speaking to various parties here, with me, of course, is the Minister of Home Affairs. He's been a long-time Minister of Health. I almost called him Minister of Health. Minister, the President spoke about the new visa regime in order to speed up the issue of tourists. Also talking about the target of 21 million tourists in 2030. Is it feasible?
Oh, yes, it is feasible. Very, very feasible. At the moment, we are having 10 million visitors. One of the impediments of people visiting your country is the requirements before they enter your country. Like this issue of visa regime is speaking about. We've already identified areas where people are complaining of what should happen when what is needed before they visit the country. There are 195 countries under United Nations, for which South Africa is one. But only 75 of them enter South Africa without any visas. The whole of SADC enter South Africa without visas. But we have got countries with huge populations like China, India, Nigeria, where such issues need to be resolved on how do you make visits between them smooth. As we have done at the moment, we have already given 10-year free visa entries for business people and diplomats, etc. Now we have to look at it on how you extend it to everybody who wants to visit.
The other issue, perhaps, particularly in South Africa, the issue of illegal immigrants. So how do you deal with that issue? Because it does impact on what you as government want to do in terms of fighting poverty.
Well, Mzandile, I'm sure if you listen to what South Africans are saying, they are not saying people must not come and visit here. No countries and island. What they are complaining about is undocumented people. That means people visiting your country without being documented. All of you as South Africans are documented. Yeah. We know who you are, where you come from, when were you born. When you take ID, we know. When you get married, you know. Even when you die, we know. So anybody living within the borders of every country, we must know such details. So is the issue of documentation. So for that reason, in 2013, the government decided to establish what they call a border management authority. That is the one which is going to, it doesn't say stop people from coming in. It says let them come in through a legal regime and let them be documented. Let's know who is inside. And remember, it's not only human beings we're talking about. It's drugs, it's human trafficking, it's goods stolen in and smuggled out, it's counterfeit goods, all those the Border Management Authority will have to look at.
Thank you very much, Minister. There was Minister Aaron Motsoaledi there, basically talking about the issue of the new visa regime that the President spoke about. We will speak to the leader of COPE now. They are just exchanging pleasantries. Mr. Lekota, you've just listened into what the President was saying.
No, I just got late. I got very late here.
Oh, you were not here?
No. I thought you were saying the minister.
No, okay, I'm talking about the President. Yeah, right. So he was speaking about a better country for everyone, building rails, super high-speed trains, a big dream for South Africa, 2 million jobs for young people. Are you disagreeing with that?
Sir, I must tell you that, you know, that actually is a dream. Countries like China, Japan have got very strong economies which are running as we talk, and they have populations that are highly trained technically and otherwise. You look at the cars that come out of their countries and all of that. Now, if we want to build the high-speed trains and things like that, we should start by training our own people, educate them, give them the training. And definitely we need an economy that's performing much better than our economy is performing at the present time. So that what makes it a dream is that it's too far to do today. And we should have concentrated on educating and training our young people. We closed our technicons and things like that. That's why we are in difficulties.
But he basically said there will be a situation where the grade, a child at the age of 10 must be able to read and write. So which basically means...
That is doable. That is doable. That is doable. But a high-speed train, to get to the point at which you can build a high-speed train, it's going to be many, many years before we get there.
Thank you very much, sir.
I was only talking to that issue, yeah.
All right. There was the leader of COPE, the Moswele Kota, basically saying, well, a lot needs to be done to achieve what the dream of the president, what the dream the president is speaking about. Of course, Bulelani, my colleague, is on the other side.
Thank you so much, Mzwandile. Of course, we're continuing to take a reaction from a cross-section of organizations. Developmental finance institutions have also been observing the State of the Nation address. I bring into the conversation Umamupilisiwe Mthethwa from the National Empowerment Fund. Ma'am, a lot of marching orders from the President are about the issue of job creation. As the Empowerment Fund, what are you taking out of this SONA?
So I think one of the critical issues that came out for me
was when the president mentioned that we have all the policies, we have our macroeconomic strategies. So now he's saying it must be all hands on the deck. So it's about the implementation phase of all those strategies that our government has come up with. But one of the other key issues for me was when he was putting a lot of emphasis on the role of the SMME sector in South Africa, because as you will all know, the next growth phase, economic growth, is not going to come from your large corporates. A lot of them are actually going under. So a lot of this revitalization of the economy, or our turnaround strategy for the economy, is going to come from the SMME sector. But you heard him also when he was talking about the role of, or what we are supposed to do in terms of supporting enterprises that are located in the townships and rural economies in South Africa.
Somebody is sitting at home and thinking, I've got a business idea, but I've been struggling to get finance. What advice would you give to those people?
So obviously you have a suite of financial, organizations and products that are there that were set up to actually assist our enterprises in South Africa. You have the IDC that was set up to actually drive the industrialization or re-industrialization of the economy. So that would be for your large businesses. Then you'll have organizations like the National Empowerment Fund. The National Empowerment Fund was set up to drive the implementation of BEE. So if you are black, if you are a woman, if you are a township-based enterprise, come to the NEF or just go into the NEF website. We have even developed the business plan toolkit for our people, because we have realized that when you talk about cash flow analysis, our people will think it's a very complex exercise. But with the business plan toolkit that you'll find on the NEF website, is very easy. It will prompt you. By the time you know it, you'll have a business plan. Because if you say balance sheet analysis or cash flow analysis, if you are a tracker, you'll think, wow, that's a mind-boggling exercise. So come to the NEF, but for the very, very small enterprises, we have another enterprise called CIFA. So CIFA's funding actually starts from as small as 50,000, and then it goes up to about 5 million. And then the NEF takes from 5 million, we go to 75 million. And then from 75 million to billions of rands, obviously you must go to the IDC.
I'm sure by the end of tonight, you're going to be getting a flood of applications to the NEF.
That's what I'm waiting for.
Ms. Philisiwe Mthethwa, the CEO of the National Empowerment Fund, of course, giving us a rundown of what you at home can do to access all the state developmental finances opportunities. For now, we're going to cross to Lulama, who's standing by on the other side of the president.
Thanks, Bulelani. With me now, I've got the Transport Minister, Fikile Mbalula. Over the long weekend, there were about 44 fatalities in road accidents in Limpopo alone. That should be a pain to you, Minister of Transport. And today, the President talked about rail infrastructure. How critical is that rail infrastructure?
It's very critical, moving people from road to rail, moving goods from road to rail is very critical. And what President have cast our imagination to, it is something that is doable and achievable, and is very safe at best, but it needs to move at a faster pace and speed in order for people to also believe in it, and it must be safe. So that's what those are some of the things that are not just a pipe dream, are actually doable. But we need to look at the short term and the long term. The other things are in the long term. In the short term, I've got to make it a point that the rail system we've got is refurbished. We've got resources, and we must spend them well. But over and above that, it must be safe, and it must transport people on time in the big cities and all of that, and this is what is important. Tomorrow morning, I will be talking to the commuters in Cape Town and reassuring them that within a period of a year and less than that, we're going to turn the situation around here. I'm going to bring safety into the trains. I'm going to ensure that the trains run on time and they're actually refurbished. And everybody will arrive on time at their work. If we achieve that, we'll have done a great deal of job for the people of South Africa.
Talking about you tomorrow going to talk to the people of Cape Town, especially rail commuters, because they are always late. This dream now of having unemployment is going to be unachievable if people continue to arrive at work late because they are going to be fired. So what it is exactly that you're going to tell them tomorrow about the challenges of trains not running on time in Cape Town?
Is to fix the basics. That's it. I mean, I'm going to put up a war room at the regional and national level through PRASA and all the other stakeholders and role players to turn around things, to ensure that we bring normality and in the investment we've made into the train system in South Africa. That is going to happen quick and fast. And to ensure that things run normally. And then we appoint people into positions and boards who are going to do the right thing and the right job to understand what it means for trains, what does it take for trains to move on time, and that is what we need to do, and to bring security in the trains, and that's what we are actually going to do, and there should be visible action within a very short space of time.
So you're promising them that indeed things are going to change?
I'm not promising, I'm a doer. If ever I'm not doing it, then I must ship out. I mean, I'm here to make things happen within the budget space and the money that I actually have. I'm not here to come and play with people. I need to characterize these things in terms of short-term, immediate, and the long-term. Of course, in the long term, this is a big dream that has been shared with South Africa today, linking us up. It is doable. Who thought that the World Cup FIFA 2010 will come to South Africa? It happened and it has passed on. It left us with Gauteng. But I need that to be expanded nationwide.
That was the Transport Minister, Fikile Mbalula, and it's back to you, Studio Leanne.
All right, Lulama, thanks very much, and to all of the reporters that are getting the response and the reaction from, firstly, the political parties. You're seeing ministers, you're seeing civil organizations as well adding their voice. Just a quick summary. Peter Mulder calling this a wish list of the president. Mmusi Maimane of the DA, he didn't give a plan, he just addressed the mess that the ANC have made. That's my money. Kenneth Meshwa, the ACDP, a nice dream speech. Julius Malema had a lot to say about that. The leader of the EFF, the president, said nothing about land. ANC abandoned the land issue. He said he's dreaming. He came here to tell us about his dreams and went on to say that the days of dreaming are now over. Now, these are just a couple of the comments that have come through. You also saw the PAC saying they are not commenting on the land issue, and that's not good enough. So, in a nutshell, let me just get your final word here, Makwe. Those are the responses from some of the political parties. What was your response? How did you find the speech?
You know, maybe I think maybe we had high expectations, or in the real sense, the president didn't meet our expectations. But maybe starting with the dream thing when it comes to the city is doable. Look at Joburg. Joburg was built at the back of a mining industry. Limpopo, as an example, you've got a huge platinum reserves, so it can still be done. And remembering that mining talks into manufacturing, so if they can combine the two, then probably maybe they can do something out of that. And if definitely they're going to auction the spectrum by the Minister of Communication, that's very good when it comes to data prices. If they're going to take lessons from the automotive sector, that's also very good. And if they're going to start doing the special development and making sure that the what they call rural or the local industrial parks gets to be revitalized, that will be good, because it will also help with the immigration, meaning people who don't have to come to Joburg looking for work, stuff like that. But now you get to be worried, you know, especially when he starts talking with the likes of ESCOM, stuff like that. Yeah. One gets a sense that maybe is it this the time that we're acknowledging things that the finance minister didn't want to acknowledge when he was delivering his budget speech when it comes to ESCOM, because basically what's going to happen here is that they will continue to give ESCOM money, whether it's that a special appropriation bill or when it comes to the 230 billion that they have to give ESCOM for the next coming 10 years. What it's a question of, they said that ESCOM, they've got money up until October. One has to ask, is that debt? Does that include loans from China, stuff like that? So maybe it's true when we made the budget speech, we were playing to like gallery. We're trying to please the rating agencies. We're afraid that maybe we will be downgraded because basically all the things that were avoided to be said during the budget speech, here we are, we're acknowledging them and they're going to be said. And you ask yourself that he mentioned last year, September, about the economic stimulus plan. How far are we with all those things? You know, you need to understand. And it's encouraging as well that we have seen that almost the 300 billion that the investment initiatives have managed to raise, almost 230 billion thereof has already been committed. That's a good thing. So, but the long and short is, you know, people were expecting real concrete actions, and I don't think we've managed to get some.
Quickly, international investors, will this inspire some confidence in them?
He played safe, and there's nothing to show that we're moving somewhere.
All right, let's leave it there. Thanks, Makwe. Thanks so much for all your opinions here on this this post-SONA analysis broadcast. Now let's continue to get some reaction now from outside Parliament, and Mzwai standing by with a minister. I'm not sure which one, but Mzwai, who have you got with you?
Oh, well, thanks, Lee. And well, he has not been promoted yet. This one is the president of the Black Management Forum, Andile Nomlala, who's basically also wanting to give us his view in terms of what the president said. As the business people, are you convinced that we're on the right path as the country?
Quite explicitly, Zwandile, I think our country is the light is being ignited. The president has outlined a very clear, comprehensive picture of where all South Africans must rally, a vision that all South Africans must rally behind. The fact that he shares a dream, it tells you that we must dream for us to be able to realize our dreams. Whether we dream big, and we must dream big so that we can fall short. I'm quite pleased by a couple of number of things that he has raised, that the BMF has always been raising. The issues of focusing on high impact economic growth sectors, the sectors such as tourism, agri-processing, even the fact that the infrastructure rollout that is now going to come, that will enable small, medium-sized businesses to be able to do business. I was quite pleased by the fact that he mentioned basic low-hanging fruits that could start igniting our economy. Issues such as doing import substituting, creating agricultural hubs where the markets for small-scale sector farmers can go and sell their goods and services. I think as black professionals and as black business leaders around in the country, we must rally around President Cyril Ramaphosa. He inspires hope. He gives us the prospects of what we want to see. We must rally behind him, support him, but obviously and naturally, we must also keep him accountable. He has made that call himself that those that are in the levers of being able to support must support, but also we must keep government accountable. So as BMF, we're quite pleased, and we're looking forward to working with all his ministers, including himself, in the 6th administration. And we will be here. We are hopeful that our future and our country is standing on a firm ground under his leadership.
Thank you very much. That was Andile Nomlala, the president of BMF, basically saying as business, they are fully behind the president as he outlines his vision. Bulelane?
Thank you so much, Mzwandile. Of course, a lot of emphasis has been made around investment, but for now we're going to maybe focus on local investment. And joining me now is the CEO of the Black Business Council, Mr. Khanki Matabane. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. As the BBC, do you take anything out of this SONA, particularly around how it's going to develop black businesses?
Thank you very much. This can be considered as the most important SONA since 1994. The country has been calling for a speech that will give hope, that will focus on employment, that will focus on growing the economy, and we think the president has delivered. The focus on the 7 priorities is what will bring us to where we want to be. Also, we've been calling for government to say, we've got so many policies. Let us focus on implementation. And we're glad that the president has heard us. The president is agreeing with us that the focus for the next 5 years should be implementation. The focus also should be on creating small businesses. We thought the president was going to touch on funding small businesses because majority of our members are struggling with access to funding. It's one thing to have an opportunity, but it's another thing if you want to grow and expand to have funding. So we had thought that the president will mention something about recapitalizing the National Empowerment Fund, because for us, that is an important institution that has been utilized before to fund black businesses. And then if you fund black and small businesses, you'll be able to create jobs.
Just talking about the issue of cutting on red tape, where do you think government can improve in practical terms?
We were happy that the president has indicated that you should not be taking more than 1 day, because it's happening in other countries like Uganda. You register a company in 1 day. So the other red tape that needs to be cut is, for example, if you're running a business, your intention is not to spend time on administration and filling forms and all those type of things. We should be creating one-stop shops for businesses. For example, if you're in province A, you don't have to go to a bigger province to fill your forms, to do your tax, to do all these things. You need to go to one-stop shop and complete everything there and find people who are willing to help you to complete that, because as a business, your intention is, your focus is not on administration, but is on growing the economy and growing the company.
Quickly, and just before I let you go, is this a practical State of the Nation address?
It is very practical, but we'll wait for more details from ministers, because as you know, the president will focus on the higher and a bigger level. But ministers, especially we're waiting for the Minister of Small Business, we're waiting for her plan. We'll work with her. We're waiting for the plan of the Minister of Trade and Industry and the Minister of Finance as well.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Khanki Matabane, who is the CEO of the Black Business Council. For more reaction, Lulama is standing by.
Thanks, Bulelani. I've got the Minister of Trade and Industry, Ibrahim Patel, who is going to tell us more about what President Cyril Ramaphosa talked about when he was referring to fair global trade. Minister, this fair global trade that the President was talking about, how is it going to benefit South Africa?
Essentially, there are two ways in which we create jobs in South Africa. The one is to do goods and services for our own people, and the other one is to sell to the rest of the world. When we sell a car, when we sell a suit, when we sell food to the rest of the world, we create jobs locally. And when the President identified the trade area, he was referring really to start here on the African continent. It's a large continent with more than 1 billion people. And we've just concluded a continental free trade agreement that binds together 54 African countries into one bloc that will be able to trade more easily with each other. And that can create more jobs. At the moment already, from the trade with the rest of the African continent, there are 250,000 South African jobs that have been created and sustained as a result. But the other part is to deal with the gathering trade war that is looming globally, particularly between the United States and China. In about a week and a half's time, President Ramaphosa will lead a delegation to the G20 summit of the 20 most significant economies in the world. And we expect the leaders of all the large countries to be there. And his message will be that we've got to find ways of avoiding this war and having a rules-based system to resolve the differences that countries have. South Africa is aggressively pursuing an industrialization path. And President Ramaphosa set out the key sectors that we see growing. And those sectors include some new sectors, the digital economy as a key one, as well as traditional sectors like mining, but with a change, mining and local processing. And of course also he proudly pointed out that he was wearing a suit made by South African hands, and it was a beautiful suit. And every viewer would do well to copy the president, and let's get into local fashion.
And your suit tonight?
My suit was made by South African hands at the very same factory that the president got his suit from. The factory is a few kilometers from Parliament in the area of Salt River. And I hope you too tonight can say that the clothing you're wearing is locally made. Let's challenge each other, create jobs here by buying local and investing locally and building this economy and supporting South Africa.
local as Leker. That's the Minister for Trade and Industry, Ibrahim Patel. I am now joined by the Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga. Ma'am, you must be proud. You must be happy about the announcement by the President tonight on basic education.
No, I am, because I'm convinced, I think like most educationists will know that basic education starts at the basic level, your early childhood development, your early grades. And we were resource constrained and we were really focusing on your higher grades. But now with the nation acknowledging that this is where it starts and ends. If it doesn't start well, your chances of success later are very limited. So I'm very encouraged and very happy.
When is this plan likely to be implemented, these changes that the President was talking about, when are we likely to see them being rolled out in schools?
You know, fortunately, with the SONA one, he had already sent, really there was indication about robotics, about coding. So we had started piloting in 100 schools in the country, in your rural and farm schools, to be able to develop the curriculum, to train our teachers, just to prepare the system. So we're ready from next year to scale up. So it's not like we're going to start from zero. So we had started from SONA 1. On integrated ECD program, we're working with social development because that one is much more difficult. The law puts early childhood development in social development. But I believe, and which is a trend international, that early childhood development has to be integrated and be led by basic education. Every department will do its part, social development will do their part, but the stimulation of kids, just getting them to be really stimulated properly quite early, it's key. And I always make an example that if you start studying after grade 12 and night school, your handwriting will tell you. So which means it has to start day one in the foundation phase.
And how is the pilot project going?
It's exciting. I can invite you, there's a school in Mamelodi, it's one of our leading schools on robotics and coding. There's a coding school in Ivory Park, established by Oracles, because we didn't have the budget when the President announced in February. So we're able to mobilize UNISA. They are using all their labs to train our teachers, but also to really enable us to roll the program. Sasol has come big on the party. Oracle and many other companies, Gigs has also come to the party. So it's exciting. So if you have time, you should visit some of our schools where we're piloting. It's a very exciting, and it's really giving a fresh breeze in the education sector. So it's quite exciting and encouraging.
That was the Minister for Basic Education, Angie Motshekga. With that, it's back to you at the studio, Leanne.
Thanks very much, Lulama, as we start coming to an end for this post-analysis of SONA 2019. Reading a couple of the reactions from South Africans with regard to this. And, you know, some people are feeling quite optimistic. Others are thinking, oh, is this just a pipe dream? The word dream seems to be something that everybody's focusing in on. So what did you think?
Well, I think as much as I think he said all the right things about what this country needs, and I think the question really that perhaps many people would want answered is the how. He did say he wants to see 2 million young people employed in the next 10 years. But how are you going to make that one possible? You're talking about the issue of young kids learning coding, but we still have the issue of just basic literacy. So some of those things, perhaps the ministers, when they flesh out the speech, so they would be able to give some of the details. In terms of the overall vision for the country, I think he did very well. Yeah. But of course, I think I would have wanted a bit more meat. So I think that's why really I feel the President should have really stressed.
And I think a lot of people have been saying that. I think perhaps our expectations were exceptionally high when it came to the State of the Nation address, and high in terms of getting that direction. We've been given the 7 priorities. Again, and just to recap them, these are the priorities that the President mentioned: economic transformation and job creation, education, skills and health, consolidating the social wage through reliable, quality basic services, spatial integration, human settlements and local government, social cohesion and safe communities, a capable, ethical and developmental state, and a better Africa and world. Okay. And how are we going to do that? And that's that whole how issue.
I think that's why, I mean, even if you listened to some of the political parties are basically saying It is a dream that he is talking about, because the issue really that the issues that the president is raising are the issues that are very relevant. I mean, when he talks about growing the economy and creating employment, I mean, all of us agree with that. We want a better Africa and a better world. All of us agree. Capable state, ethical state, all of us agree that that must happen. But then comes the question, do you have the people who are geared towards ensuring that that which we have said to the nation is implemented? I think for me, as they would say, they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Yeah.
That's how I would characterize it.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we again have to ask ourselves the question about a 10-year plan right now. And when he lays out this, within the next 10 years, we will have made progress in tackling poverty. I mean, the thing is, no person in South Africa will go hungry in 10 years. I'm not sure that people want to hear that. Our economy will grow at a much faster rate. 2 million more young people will be in employment, and our schools will have a better educational outcomes, and every 10-year-old will be able to read, and violent crime will be halved. So this is a 10-year forecast, but there's still there's still all those days between the 10 years of how we plan on achieving this.
Perhaps, Leanne, the difficulties that we are going through as a country are the ones really that perhaps make us doubt even the genuineness of the message. I think he is already, planning for a second term, so to speak. So if, let's say, the second term will be achieved, so this could actually be great in terms of planning. Here is the president laying out the vision that this is what I want to do. So you and I are interested in seeing some of the short-term, medium-term, and of course the long-term would be the 10 years. If he is able to demonstrate with speed what would be the short-term interventions that will make sure that the economy is growing. Yes, he did mention that on the 5th to the 7th of November this year is going to be an investment summit, which I think is very positive. So we will also be watching very closely there, Leanne, as to what sort of pledges, how different are they from what happened last year. So that is where you'd really be able to see if what he is saying he really intends to achieve. Of course, they want to build the new city, or the new cities. I would be very interested to see that. In fact, I personally have been feeling, where is Democracy City?
Yeah. You know, I understand that, but it was always, you know, at the end of the speech to come through and say, I dream of a city. It's not a, we are going to build a city. I dream of that city. But are we, you know, instead of maybe rallying people and saying, right, we have found the space, we know where it's going, this is where the new city is going to be, and we are going to start building it. Yeah, and I think that that's perhaps what people have now grasped at, is this dream of a new city.
I think perhaps his strategy is this. He is selling us a dream. The question is, are we taking that dream? Are we embracing that dream? If indeed we agree that what he has said is correct and we agree with it, so then we can start. I mean, he has 5 years to be able to realize many of the things that he's speaking about. And remember, Leanne, this is June, right? In the next few months, we'll be having another State of the Nation address. He should be able to account. So he has sold us a dream. In the next, is it 7 or 8 months?
Yeah, possibly, but
yes, about
7, 8 months.
He should be able to say, in June, this is what I spoke about.
Yeah.
So a few months down the line, this is what I'm going to do. So let's perhaps give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. He's selling us a dream. He just wants to see if we are embracing it.
And you see, he did talk about the fact that he is having these very serious conversations. He named 4 people, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Naledi Pandor, Ms. Jessie Duarte, and Prince Xi Jinping.
In fact, President Xi Jinping, in fact, when I was listening to his speech, I know this is what I normally say. I'm going to be very short.
Good.
This is what I normally say when I listen to the President of China. From the beginning to the end, his speech is laced with economic challenges and realities of his country. I think our president is going that direction. If he follows it through, will be another China.
There we go. Okay. Well, in the
terms
good
of
sense.
development.
In the good sense.
In terms of development.
Right. Thank you very much. It's so nice working with you and chatting to you and getting your analysis. Let's quickly go for the final word to the red carpet. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll wrap up over there. Bye-bye.
Well, it's been a busy day here, right here in Parliament, starting from the pomp and ceremony today, as well as the red carpet. And now later on, the President taking the national salute, of course, with that spectacular fly past by the South African Navy. And of course, for the big issue of the night, him delivering the State of the Nation address for 2019. I'm with my colleague Lula Mamaja. What stood out for you today?
For me, Bulelani, it was the president talking about having violent crimes. You know, South Africa has a big problem of violent crimes. It has a big problem of high crime rate. For him to say he intends to have it, that stood out for me.
All right, Lulu, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you probably are looking forward to going to bed to rest, because it's been a long day. My name is Bulelani Philip.
I'm Lula Mamaja.
It's a good night from us, and it's back to you guys in studio.